Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Eternity, by Otaku_Rinibo. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin chapter 1. I just wanted someone. Anyone. To love me. So. This is the end. Why? Why did it have to be this way? Is this my punishment? Heh. Serves me right. For what I did to you. Right. Izuku. Freak. Don't come near my son. Stay away. A frightened woman threw her freshly peeled potato basket at the young, blonde boy sniffing the air for food to eat. Unlike what the woman claimed, he was nowhere near her stupid son who instinctively cried for his mother upon seeing the boy a few feet away. With a dog-like tail, pointy, blonde puppy ears, fangs, and claws to boot, the young demi-human child instinctively turned at the sound of the shrieking before being pelted by the potatoes and basket. He whimpered as the pain set in and he fell to the ground. In shock, the pup remained on the dirty path slowly gathering himself. Anger set in quickly as tears prick his crimson eyes now slit in rage. He snarled, shivering from either hate or terror as he threw himself off his hands and back on his withered, bare feet. He barely raised his fangs at the frightened mother, who by now had drawn a crowd of other villagers to her aid. Before the boy could do anything rash, his neck was grasped from behind, and with it, his body was pinned to the ground. The man, this woman's husband, had painfully dug his knee into the child's back and buried his face in the dirt, almost strangling him as dirt and debris lodged in his nostrils, burning his insides. Gasping from the pain, Katsuki Bakugou strained a gasp, barely able to breathe. He whined, struggling, only making the pain worsen. The crowd of onlookers shouted their approval, calling for his death and other sorts of horrible things as Bakugou's tail and ears began furling. I hate you, with that screech, the boy latched onto the burly hand of the man with his fangs sinking into his skin. He wouldn't go down without a fight. Ah! Enraged and in pain, the husband beat his fist against the side of Bakugou's head, but the boy's locked jaw never budged. Finally, the man flung himself and collided with the child's body against a wood stack where one of the logs knocked the boy nearly unconscious. Filthy demon! The man growled between his clenched teeth as another man came to provide a cloth bandage to his hand. We should just kill him. What good can come from having this monster in our village? The crying mother begged as she held her sobbing son. His mother is dead now anyhow, there's no one to protect this vermin. We should end its suffering once and for all. Another woman added. As the added-on agreements from the bystanders of the village continued, the 5-year-old child's consciousness began to fade black. Cowards. All of them. Maybe I'd be better off dead. Maybe I don't want to live. Go on then. Just do it. Are you all mad? A kinder, more motherly cry outspoke the mob as footsteps hurriedly ran to protect the youngling. Lady Inko. He's only a child. The same age as my own 5-year-old son. How could you? How dare you? He is only a child. A child. What do you suppose we do, Lady Inko? I know the child's mother was your friend, but she betrayed us by mating with that monster. Look at the devil spawn she created. He tried to kill me. The man shouted. You're really going to sit here and tell me you feel nothing for this boy? There was an awkward silence and the villagers quietly glanced amongst themselves before he more calmly spoke. What do you suppose we do then? He can't stay here any longer. We can't live in fear of our own children for the sake of that. The man motioned his arms. If he must go, then let him live outside the village. The woman named Inko responded between disgruntled lips. Outside. Bakugou's distant thoughts responded weakly. Humph. The man glances around at the other villagers who awaited his word. He rubbed his scraggly beard hairs before he grumpily huffed. I guess I have no choice. The mutt will live on the outskirt of the village. But I implore none of you to be in contact with him in any way. Just leave me alone. I don't need anybody. I'll be fine on my own. I don't need anyone. The man who'd been bitten grabbed the demi boy by the neck and dragged him to the entrance of the village, then chuckled him into the woods. With an unceremonious thud, the boy lay in the leaves, dirt, and grass of the village. No. I don't need anybody. Nobody. 5 years had passed, coming up on the winter solstice. In preparation for this special occasion, the village was bustling about with the new harvest. Vendors from around the country had begun to gather in the square selling various wares that couldn't usually be found anywhere else. While the town was buzzing and frolicking about, Bakugou was struggling to get by. He had just captured a rat from the outside of his cave and was attempting to set up a fire with no luck. The fire rocks he'd found were too wet to set off a spark. The young boy shivered with his tail tucking around his bare feet. Figures. He grumbled. The wolf child, now 10 years of age, had no parents to speak of. He was alone in the world and the only people he thought he could trust turned on him on the spot, kicking him out of the only place he knew how to call home. Additionally, Katsuki had to learn how to survive on his own. Thanks to his mother's efforts before her illness took her life several years ago, Katsuki knew the basics of catching prey and cooking them so he wouldn't get sick, and he knew what plants and animals to stay away from. His cave, which was a mile or so away from the village's guarded gates, was the only shelter the pup had. While it wasn't perfect and was definitely small and cold during the winter months, his furs and knowledge on how to keep the rain out helped to make it somewhat bearable. Yes, the demi-human was getting by rather well. All except for one gravely overlooked thing. Katsuki Bakugou was extremely lonely. Being a young child who neither belonged to the human realm nor the beast men tribes, the young wolf realized rather quickly that he was an outcast that would never be a part of any home outside the one he made for himself. With his beast father dead years before his mother, and no other BLD relatives left living, there was no place for him to go. This fact, while ignored, was damaging Bakugou more than he liked to admit. His heart was always empty. Between worrying about his next meal or how he would keep warm, and always counting the sun's hours so he would make it back before nightfall, the poor child wasn't even able to cope with the loss of a pack. On the complete opposite spectrum, Izuku Midoriya, the son of the leader of the village where Bakugou was cast away from, was the most beloved child there. As the only heir to the leadership position, he was given many important expectations from his mother, father, and the Denesians. But, only being 10 years old, he was still the little bundle of joy for the people. Everyone doted and adored the young MSTR, especially when his father had to be absent, leaving the mother, Inko, in charge of the affairs. Everyone was kind and loving of the boy to the point Izuku couldn't fathom them being anything else. While the older boys picked on him occasionally, Izuku still got along with everyone he met. He was still a bit of a crybaby, but he was extremely giving and kind. He was the type of gentle soul that wouldn't kill a bee even if it stung him. To the others, however, that made them wonder how Izuku was such an odd child. From never learning how to hunt due to his kind-hearted nature to keeping himself entertained by his curious mind and brilliant intelligence, the village elder secretly hoped this behavior would be something Izuku would eventually grow out of. While the village loved him, they weren't sure how to interact with him either. He was different, and that difference made him strange. Nonetheless, Izuku never wanted for anything. Food, shelter, clothing, love, a mommy and daddy, little Izuku Midoriya had it all. And yet, despite his seemingly perfect life, little Izuku was unhappy. While he didn't know the word for it yet, he was incredibly lonely. Having no real friends and being put on a grand pedestal his whole life, Izuku was desperate for any and all attention he could get to feel like a normal boy. That's why he did what he did. But aren't the woods dangerous? The half-smile born from a combo of fear and concern twitched nervously around the boy's freckled cheeks. The twin older boys around 13 smirked at each other along with their other friends that had included Izuku in several of their less than well-meaning activities as they nodded in sync. Only for little cowards. And you're no coward, right Izuku? I mean, your dad is the leader of the village. He's super brave and strong. No one dares to mess with him. The first brother, Darien remarked. The second brother, Adrian, mischievously snickered in agreement, coming up behind the young MSTR and placing his thin fingers over his tiny shoulders. Exactly. And his only son wouldn't be a coward. Right. And no. Of course not. Izuku sputtered determinedly. So, here's the deal. We'll let you hang out with us, teach you everything you want, and be like your very own brothers if you go to the woods and bring back one of these. The boy reached in his pocket and took out a small but incredibly appealing tuft of blonde and brown fur. You want me to risk the wrath of my mom for a bit of fuzz? The skeptical Izuku blinked unsurely. Not just any fuzz. The brother behind Izuku hastily corrected, it belongs to Kaken. Adding a sinister growl to his voice, the boy shoved Izuku down to the dirt with his shadow casting menacingly over him. Who's that? Midoriya gasped. Kaken is the wolf demon of the mountains. They say that he was born right here in this village and even tried to eat on the children. What? Shaking, the young child shivered. Yeah. He was banished by your own mother and sent to live up on the mountain in the only clearing of the beast woods. Pointing to the mountain beyond the log gate, the twin who started this whole thing grinned. But I'm sure you're not scared of him. In fact, I think you should be given an even tougher challenge. What are you doing, brother? The other twin began, only to be interrupted by a glare from his twin. Instead of a bit of lousy fur, his evil smile stretched over his thin lips as he whispered, bring back his tail. But if I do that, then won't this Kaken demon eat me? Well, if you're too much of a girl to do it then. I guess you'll be all alone forever and no one will ever take you seriously as our leader. After all, we will remember this. And everyone will know what a coward you are. Too young and naive to know a bad deal when he heard one, Izuku quietly mulled over his choices knowing there was only one he could pick. And being a desperate, lonely kid, he couldn't think twice before nodding. Okay. I'll face this Kaken of the mountain and I will get his tail. Throwing his fist in the air, Izuku giggled excitedly as he hastily gathered his cream-colored cloak and ran for his home to prepare. Hey! Do you really think this is a good idea? Adrian asked softly to his brother. I mean, what if he actually finds the demon? He is still the son of the chief, we could get in real trouble if he dies. Oh, calm down. You're always worrying about stupid stuff. The older twin huffed with his crossed arms smugly around his chest. He stared at the small form of Izuku as he rushed down the village road with a smirk. Even if he did get hurt, they wouldn't know it was us that put him up to it. Besides, he won't do it. He's a baby. Okay. That should be everything. Izuku softly uttered as he took his small satchel with bread and a water sack around his waist for his journey. With the sun rising soon, Izuku knew he didn't have much time before the morning came and his mom would wake. He needed to act fast. While he hadn't been to this part of the mountain before, he knew the grown-ups had tracked that way before in search of wild game for the village. For them, they say it takes them 2 hours to go up then come down. For little Izuku, it might take 4. However, he was determined. If this was his chance to make friends, even have brothers to rely on, he was willing to risk anything for that comfort his was missing. Had he known what was to come, perhaps he would have thought twice that day. An hour into his climb, Izuku breathed heavily with each step. While the climb wasn't very arduous, Izuku was used to an easier terrain, but now his little feet hurt after the non-stop journey. Oof. Tripping on an outstretched tree root, the boy gasped as The dirt covered his patched cloak. Ah! Deciding to sit for a bit and take some water, the young man crawled to a secluded spot listening to the birds. It sure is spooky in this part of the woods. Maybe I should turn back. I'm tired. And I haven't seen any sign of a demon in these woods, just the regular creatures of the forest. Feeling defeated, Izuku pouted, holding his flask between his little hands. I bet this Kaken doesn't even exist. They probably tricked me. Resting his chin in his arms, Izuku sniffles, pulling his cloak closer around his neck. The breeze briskly passed through him, waving the loose fabric around his shoulders and the leaves of the trees. That's when he heard it. Yelp. The sound was of a dog squealing in pain. It was loud enough that the birds nesting in the trees flew off in fear, startling Izuku to press himself against the bark of the same tree. He quickly glanced left and right, then dove under a bush. What was that? Was it a wolf? Fear struck the young boy's heart as he gripped his cloak between his fingers. I have to get out of here before. Just as he began to scramble to his feet, he heard the familiar sound of sobbing. Ha! Green hair flopped over his large, round eyes as the sound took a moment to process in his ears. Crying. Slowly Midoriya sat down on the leaves with his knee, then listened harder. The cries of someone not too far away carried with the chilling morning breeze. It was painful, heartfelt, and lonely. Oh, so lonely. He knew these cries well, and by the sounds of it, it was another boy. Did the wolf bite him? Was he in danger? With a sense of worry and also terror, Izuku crawled on his arms toward the sound, trying to keep low in case the wild animal he heard previously was still at large. I'll save you. Don't worry. I'm coming. The young boy determinedly pulled himself further until the sobbing was right behind a set of berry bushes within a clearing in a ditch below. Peeking through, Izuku found himself staring at the most appealing blonde hair he'd ever seen. It was so bright in the dazzling sunlight and seemed so soft while also being in a natural spike atop his head. His ruby eyes glistened with tears, only making them seemingly glow in a radiant light. His skin was a silky tan color, and while bruised and scarred was still appealing to Izuku. Unable to stop staring, Izuku softly gulped. With an effort to get a closer look, Izuku reached to pull away the branches of the bush without taking his eyes off the other boy lying on the ground. However, just as he did so, the branch snapped and sent the weight he put on his other arm to tumble forward. With a screech, Izuku came tumbling down the clearing, down the small dip of the earth, and into the ditch. Ah! Bumping into the boy, the two fell back in opposite directions, gathering themselves. Ow, ow, ow. That hurt. Sitting on his knees and rubbing his head, Izuku barely had time to gather himself before the growl of something vile startled him to fall back on his hands. Get the hell away from me, human. Ha! Confused, Izuku blinked rapidly. What do you? Slowly, the green eyes of the young MSTR trailed down to the bared, sharp teeth that had a semblance of humanity, yet uncanny. He then glanced up to see flat across his head were two golden doggy ears with brown tips at the top like a wolf, and just as he had feared, when Izuku looked down, he noticed the black claws digging in the dirt with a bushy tail curled over his thighs. Terror immediately took over. His blood ran cold, his body shook, and his throat closed up. Kaken. A beast man. This boy was a beast man. A part of a dangerous tribe that his mom and other villagers warned him about. But he was also a boy, and as his eyes had timidly landed on the trembling leg that was caught in a hunter trap oozing blood, the terror in his little heart started to subside a bit. Why, you're hurt? Because of your people. The other barked. I could help. Don't you dare touch me. I'll kill you. While his words dripped in vicious venom, his crimson eyes shivered with swelling emotions, causing large tears to prickle beneath. Slowly, Izuku stood up and carefully walked backward, showing his hands while also remaining in eye contact with the injured cub. Oh, okay, I'll go. He slowly spoke so as not to agitate further. That's right. Run away. Just go and die. Ugh. The young wolf reached all around him, grasping anything his claws could grab and flinging them randomly in the other's direction to no avail. The messy tosses all missed their target by a ridiculous rate as Izuku made a beeline up the hill and through the bushes again, leaving the other boy alone. That's what I thought. Coward. Panting, Bakugou relaxed his throwing arm before the pain in his leg came shooting back, causing an involuntary yelp. With a hiss of pain, the wolf cub once again attempted to remove the trap that, while malfunctioned and only sliced slightly into his skin, was still wedged in well enough that he couldn't remove the leg without further damage. SHT. Come on, stupid BSTRD. The boy cried in vain. He cried, bitter, furious, and alone. Damn it, DMN it, DMN it. Beating his fist to the ground in defeat and sorrow, Bakugou began to dread the inevitable. This was how he would die. So humiliating. A bitter end to a bitter life. Hot tears spilled down his flushed cheeks as snow began to trickle from above him. Sobs escaped as well as whines behind that heated face as the reality of his situation came to a head. I just wanted someone, anyone, to love me. Gasping for breath, Izuku Midoriya flew through the brush and would terrified. That was the demon of the mountain. That was no demon. That was a real-life beast man. I could have died. He could have actually killed me. What was I thinking? I was so stupid. He could have. Slowly Izuku came to a stop. He breathed heavily as a thick fog began to swirl around his lips. The temperature had dropped significantly since he booked it. Glancing up through the tree leaves, Izuku made out the familiar storm clouds associated with snowfall. He then glanced back down the mountainside to see in the distance the village gate and small fire smoke trails feeding into the skies from the citizens inside. He wanted to go home in his miserable, cowardly defeat. However, he was a boy. Like me. They called a boy a demon. I know he's a beast man. But he's still only a boy. And whirling on his heels, Izuku gasps in realization. In this weather with that injury, and knowing that his village, which had already apparently ostracized this boy, wouldn't help, there was no way Kaken would survive the night. I have to save him. Slowly, Izuku's feet began to walk, then trot, and finally sprint toward the agonized wails of the injured wolf. On his way, Izuku's wide eyes darted around the wood for any useful items to help pry off the bear trap. Izuku hurriedly tucked under his arm a large, thick tree branch he almost tripped over, dragging along the forest floor. Then a rock as he turned the corner of the patch, barely keeping his balance. Finally, he entered the clearing. Okay. Don't move. I've got a big stick. Ha! Shooting up from the dirt, the bewildered cub watched as stumbling down the hill came the same, green-eyed kid from before, only this time, he carried a thick tree branch and a heavy-duty rock. What the hell are you doing, idiot? I thought I said get lost. Yeah, you did, but I just couldn't sit back and let you die. Too stunned for words, only dumb symbols escaped the chapped lips of the beast boy. What the hell do you think you're doing? Trying to pull away as Izuku wedged the rock into the teeth of the trap and then stuck the stick beside that, Bakugou suddenly came back to reality. This might hurt, warned the other before quickly he yanked the stick, acting as a lever releasing the trap. With a scream to rival a banshee, Bakugou wailed in pain as red liquid spewed from the wound, splattering to the dirt and piling snow. Quickly, Izuku threw the trap away along with the stick and began to kneel, knowing there wasn't much time left before the snow picked up as already white littered the ground, erasing the canvas of the earth with it. Wallowing in pain and adrenaline, Bakugou gasped and cried out, not expecting Izuku to boost him up from behind and drag him away. While he wanted to protest, the exhaustion of the ordeal and the corrosion in his tiny body were already draining him enough. Not to mention the lack of a decent night's sleep the last week of this cold winter month. P put me down, DMN it. The wolf snapped, attempting to bite the other's fingers from around his arms. Please. I'm just trying to save you. What makes you think I even want to be saved? This question paused the young man momentarily, only enough to pity the poor beast before resuming the pace up the slope. Deciding to ignore the backlash, Izuku trudged through until spotting a cave not too far from sight. Perfect. We can rest there and I'll dress your wound. Oh, hell no. Teeth clenching snapped the already tense air as once again, Bakugou attempted to bite off Izuku's gentle hands. This was the fourth attempt at bandaging the wound, and while Izuku realized the situation wasn't ideal, he continued to press the other boy to help him. Would you stop snapping at me? The exasperated village boy groaned. I can take care of myself. I don't need your filthy, human hands on me. Barked the blonde. Well, these filthy human hands have already touched you. Retorted the shorter. Silent, Bakugou growled under his breath. The air fogged around his bared teeth viciously. Izuku huffed and then shivered. The fire he had built had already begun to die, and with the weather picking up, he truly began to worry he wouldn't make it back down the mountain before the weather got worse and he'd lose his way. The best thing to do was to stay where he was and try to survive the night. However, if this other boy's parents came back and saw his injury, poor Izuku feared he wouldn't live to see the sunrise. The worry was apparent on young Midoriya's face and caused the sitting pup to scoff. Scared. Izuku glanced at him confused. Looks like your mommy and daddy aren't gonna be able to save you. And what about you? Are your parents coming soon? Izuku questions. The silence wasn't what triggered his green eyes to widen, it was the sudden sadness behind those intense, crimson eyes that appeared out of nowhere. The dog ears atop his head that had been reared back in anger had suddenly relaxed in a more sullen state down the sides of his spiked, beach blonde locks. The dots connected. You're alone. Aren't you? Enraged by the observation, Bakugou snarled. I'm better off alone. The tone, while violent, only made Izuku pity the wolf child more as the air of heartache wrenched his soul. I don't need anyone. I'm doing just fine. So, get the hell out of here. If this storm doesn't kill you, then I will. Shivering, Izuku softly glanced to the side of the open cave as the snow continued to pile up, then back at the wounded wolf. Without a word, Izuku sullenly began to walk out of the cave. What was the point of staying where he wasn't wanted? He just wanted to go home at this point. So much for being a good person and saving his life. He wasn't even grateful. Surely he shouldn't care whether he makes it through the night or not. As a chilling wind passed through the cloak Izuku wrapped himself in, he paused, hearing the clattering teeth of the boy he'd left behind several feet away echoing in the cave. He slowly turned over his shoulder to see Bakugou crawling to the dying flames to stoke the fire, only for it to fizzle out. He yelped as his leg accidentally brushed against the rocks, dirtying the wound and causing it to bleed again. Frustrated, he roared, beating his fist to the ground. A soft fluttering sound made the boy's wolf ears twitch as a white cloak rested over his shoulders. Jerking back, he saw that freckled boy's warm smile and extended hand close enough that if he had wanted to, Bakugou could have made good on his word to kill him. But he was too astonished to even blink. I'll fix the fire, and I'll dress your wound. Please, let me help you. Bakugou's red eyes darted between the other hand and his smile. Feigning a huff of indifference, he only snapped his head away and meekly slapped his hand away. Whatever, if you want to die tonight, then that's your choice. Hee hee. Chuckling mildly at his awkward way of inviting him to stay, Izuku nodded. Okay. Give me a moment. Bakugou pulled his uninjured leg to his chest, eyeing the human suspiciously. He watched every movement in wonderment and curiosity as the boy stoked the fire and blew the cinders to once again alight to a roaring flame. He watched cautiously as Izuku sighed and air fogged around his pale features that had begun to redden in the freezing temperatures. As he turned to glance at the prying eyes of the half-beast, Bakugou coolly glanced away with his nose up indignantly. Izuku smiled shyly and grasped his satchel bag that hung around his chest. All right. I'm going to come over and dress your wound. Ha. Scoffing again, Bakugou scrolled into the darkness. Whatever, human. You know, I have a name. Izuku knelt down on the side of the injury and slowly removed his pack to dig through the contents. Like I care. Why would you say that? Rolling his eyes exaggeratedly, Bakugou tossed his head to face the other. Because, with their faces so close together, Bakugou gasped mid-sentence. He hadn't realized how fast the distance between them had closed, and while it startled him, he was also taken back by the brightness in Izuku's eyes. His own widened and a faint blush dusted his cheeks before impulse forced his hand to shove Izuku back. You're too close, demi. Sorry. The other profusely apologized on his knees. Humph. Quickly crossing his arms, Bakugou pouted. And as to your stupid question, I'm never gonna see you again, so why does it matter if you tell me your name? Well, who said it would be the last? Excuse me. Oh. Don't worry. I'm not saying I will bring anyone here, but... Shyly, the green-haired boy tapped his fingers together as he crossed his legs. It's just... I've never met anyone like you. And well... I thought maybe we could. You know. Be friends. Shocked, the blonde blinked his eyes rapidly. Friends. With him. His mouth became dry. TCH. As if. He muttered, once more shoving his arms to cross his chest. Right, sorry, that was a bit presumptuous of me. Once again he began to go through his bag. Oh. Oh. The hell you mean, oh? Griped Bakugou. I, might have. Forgot my medicine kit back home. Sheepishly, Izuku rubbed the back of his unkempt hair as the other boy stuck out his lip unimpressed. Great, I'm going to die here and all I get is an oh. Flopping over on his side so his back faced Izuku, Bakugou growled under his breath. No. No one is dying. Izuku shook his hands vicariously as he glances around hopelessly looking for something, anything, to help his new friend. Ah. Ryup. The ears atop the blonde's head twitched at the sound, making him glance over his shoulder to see something that ingrained itself into his memories. This boy he'd only just met, whom he'd been nothing but mean and nasty to, was ripping his cloak in this freezing weather into long strips of gauze. Stunned, Bakugou barely had time to sit up before Izuku ripped another one. Hey. He gasped. The hell you think you're doing? Improvising. You're not dying tonight. Izuku proudly beamed as he ripped another piece his cloak. There, that's good. He nodded, then knelt down. I'll wash it with my water and then bandage it. Hopefully, it will last. Right. Unable to come up with any snide remarks, Bakugou softly nodded. Sorry if it hurts. Just tell me if it's too tight. Sure. His crimson eyes stared intensely at the boy before him as he fumbled with the strips of his cloak, painstakingly wrapping the wound as carefully as possible. While Izuku's eyes were locked on his task, Bakugou felt his cheeks redden. The way the kid's brows were creased so seriously was pretty cute. The wagging of his tail behind him was what snapped Bakugou from that trance. He sharply turned away. Sorry. Does it hurt? Concerned, Izuku paused his tie. I'm fine, demi. Barked the embarrassed pup. So, you've been on your own since you were 5. Izuku, now sitting a few feet away from the roaring fire, questioned the other next to him a good distance away. Younger, technically, not like I care. I was perfectly capable of leaving the nest. Bakugou smirked proudly. I haven't needed or wanted anyone. Wow. That's so cool. You're so brave. Izuku gasped in excitement. Bakugou scoffed with a roll of his crimson eyes cheekily. He glanced back at the other boy with a cocky swing of his head. I pretty much taught myself everything I know. So, you know how to hunt and stuff. Of course. He replied matter of fact. So easy. I catch my own meals all the time. It's child's play. You're amazing. I barely know how to use a knife. I've never been able to kill anything. Reluctant to elaborate, Izuku shied away and pulled what was left of his cloak around his shoulders as a breeze of blistering cold went right through him. I came close. But the look in their eyes. It's... He stopped and shook his head before tears could leak from his reddening eyes. Anyway, I guess I'll have to wait till I'm older to get more confidence. Bakugou blinked softly as he watched the boy. He sighed heavily, his thoughts blaring loudly in his mind. On one side of this war was a voice screaming to comfort him, on the other side was another voice shouting profanity. With an exasperated groan, Bakugou turned sharply to the other. I'm sure there's something even you are good at. Izuku curiously lifted his heavy eyes to the blonde, then noticed how his tail was slightly wagging behind him. With a giggle Izuku nodded. Of course. I love to read and make art. I also love helping people when they need someone. That explains a lot. Ha. Confused, Izuku pet his head to the side innocently. Well, you ignored me telling you to go away. I even tried to hurt you. Yet, you. Growling as a soft, warm feeling began to overpower his heart, Bakugou blushed. DMN it, maybe you are too soft. Shoulda just left me there to die. Guilt-ridden, Izuku softly pulled his fingers to make tight fists. His forest eyes stared into the fire before he blurted, yeah well. Even though I said all that before, I was supposed to man up and hurt you. The ears atop his blonde locks flapped at the sudden shout. Unable to speak, Bakugou sat there stunned. The reason I was up here to begin with was because some of the village boys told me they would be like brothers to me if I went to the mountain and brought back the tale of the demon of the mountain called Kaken. Tears spilled from his overflowed eyes as his shoulders shook from regret and sorrow. I wish I could be as strong as you. Not need anyone, and never feel the awful way loneliness hurts. Like I'm being ripped apart in my heart. Gripping his chest, Izuku leaned forward with a sob as tears stained the dirt. Bakugou watched on with wide eyes. I didn't know who you were and I just wanted to be acknowledged for once instead of just fake admiration because of my family. No one likes someone who is weird or cowardly. None of the other children in the village act like me. I'm an outcast. I thought I could earn their approval. Looking back on it now. That was an awful thing I almost did. The pup slowly came down from his shock and slowly cast his gaze to the crackling fire. He was silent, the wind from outside the cave echoing along the ridges and trees. He tapped his claws against his knee as anger boiled rapidly when the details of this story began to smear into his brain, but before they could become as red as the fire before him, his crimson eyes landed back onto the bandages along his leg. He paused, stared at the carefully wrapped gauze fashioned out of this other boy's only cloak, then heavily groaned. Maybe you should've. Bakugou sighed, tossing a stick into the flames. What? Stunned, Izuku sniffled and timidly gazed at the blonde. Look. It's whatever, okay. I'm used to people trying to kill me, or whatever. But I'm Katsuki Bakugou. And I'll never fall prey to a stupid human. Proudly, Bakugou held his fist up to his face with a determined, strong glare. While stunned, Izuku felt relief wash over him knowing that, in his own way, this other person he tried to hurt had forgiven the act he could have committed. Oh. Izuku softly smiled. What? Barked the other. Oh. Well, now I see why they called you Kaken. If Katsuki is your name, then they must have just misremembered. Blinking in shock, Bakugou was rendered speechless. He forgot he wasn't going to let this SQR know his name. A deep blush dusted his cheeks before whirling on his side to face away from Izuku, embarrassed. Forget you heard that name, filthy human. You don't deserve to know or call me by name. Mulling it over, Izuku nodded and leaned on his hands as he replied softly, Izuku. What? My name. It's Izuku Madariya. But since you like to not call people by their names, you don't have to call me that either. Humph. Your name is, useless human. And that's what I'll call you. Deku. Bakugou smartly remarked. Fine, then I get to call you Kaken. Blushing with a puff of steam off his head, Bakugou snapped away from the grinning boy and curled up against the fire. Ugh. Whatever. He exclaimed. Izuku couldn't help the laugh that bubbled from his chest. The demi-human boy was strange, sure, but he was also kind in his own way. Izuku found himself very happy to be with him. Slowly, the laughter died and Izuku was left with a sudden empty feeling as his eyes gazed into the light snowfall. His brows knitted together before quickly sniffling. I need to go back now. He sadly stated. The silence that followed caused Izuku to cautiously glance at the boy laying in the cave dirt. While he had his back turned and he couldn't see the expression Bakugou had, he somehow could sense the loneliness inside bursting out. Independent Illinois come back though. With food and water. Oh. I'll get some blankets or a cloak. Shut up. I don't need your pitiful charity. The blonde snapped half-heartedly. We were never supposed to meet, so just stay away. I'm better on my own anyways. I guess you're right. Izuku slowly uttered, casting his gaze to the orange and yellow flames dancing upon the wood. We weren't supposed to meet. At least not like this. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm glad I did meet you. With shimmering eyes, Bakugou gasped. His chest fluttered from within from both excitement and warmth. Whatever, Deku. He replied with a smirk. You were gonna kill me. I already apologized for that. Besides, I wasn't going to kill you. Sputtered the smaller only to be interrupted by laughter. Ha ha ha. Kaken's laughter continued to echo in the cave, and into Midoriya's ears. His own emerald eyes softened with a similar feeling bubbling in his chest. Hee hee. Ha ha ha. Unable to hold back, the young boy laughed alongside Bakugou, enjoying and savoring that last moment before the long trudge back to the village began. Chapter 2, Let's Just Run Away. Bakugou awoke with a start as his body's pain tolerance ran short. He squeezed his thigh as a shooting pain traveled through his muscle. With a sharp hiss, the young pup took deep, soothing breaths to ease his body back down to the dirt floor. The furs and cloak wrapped around his body slipped from his shoulders, exposing him to the brisk, morning air. A shiver rushed through his spine as he glanced around his dingy cave. He was alone. For some odd reason, he wondered why he expected someone to be there. I'll be back tomorrow. Oh. Absently, Bakugou uttered to himself. He had almost forgotten about that weird kid. What was his deal anyway? He mutters. Whatever. Not like I'll see him again. Sadness washed over his young, brittle face. Even his doggy ears dropped over his scalp. When he realized this, he briskly shook his head. He couldn't allow this to affect him. No way. He was Kastuki Bakugou, the lone wolf. He didn't need anyone. And he sure as hell didn't want anyone. But it was nice having someone to talk to. I guess. Glancing at his carefully wrapped leg, his long nails caressed the fabric. What was his name again? He absently sighed. His red eyes lazily glanced to the opening of the cave as the image of the boy in his mind walked up with a large smile that he always seemed to have on his face. But as the sun began to set above the trees, blinding the boy a moment, he rapidly blinked, his eyes adjusting. When he reopened, there was no one there, as usual. Izuku. My name, it's Izuku Midoriya. But since you don't like to call people by their names, you don't have to call me that. Izuku. Bakugou breathily uttered. Just then his stomach loudly growled. A sinking feeling swelled his gut besides the hunger. How was he to hunt? While he hadn't tried to stand yet, Bakugou knew deep down that he wouldn't be able to capture prey in his condition for a few days. He couldn't let the memory of that boy cloud his mind. There were more serious matters. It's fine. There's plenty of bugs I can eat in here. But the winter months weren't going anytime soon. How would he build a fire? Would he just end up freezing to death? Panic. Anger. Pain. The emotional state of this poor half-breed was starting to take its toll. Am I really gonna die like this? Sniffles the boy. Bitterly, Bakugou hastily dried his tears. Screw that. Determined, the demi-human crawled from his makeshift bed toward the fire. I've never had anyone to help me. I've been through worse. I can do it all on my own. I don't need anyone. Kaken. He paused. His ears were fully irked as he carefully strained to listen. Kaken. It was faint, but he heard a voice. That kid. No way. It couldn't be. Kaken. I'm here. I brought everything I thought you might need. What? Stunned Bakugou dumbly stared through the opening of his cave only to see the cheerful, excited grin of that same boy from yesterday. You've got to be shitting me. And upon his back was a large, overfilled pack with furs sticking out. While he wanted to be angry, all he could feel was his tail wagging behind him as he hastily sat up. What took you so long, idiot? Sorry. Had to sneak this by the village gate. Izuku, out of breath, replied carefully, setting the late bag down with a happy sigh. Thank goodness. Plopping down, Izuku caught his breath as Bakugou eyed him carefully. A puzzled look was all he could muster. This kid. He's so strange. Why would he come back here? I know he said he wanted to be friends or whatever. But I did try to hurt him. Something wrong. Izuku pipped up after noticing the wolf's crimson eyes leering at him. Embarrassed, Bakugou shoved Midoriya and fumbled on his words. Shut up. You should have just left me alone. Ah. Falling into the dirt, Deku softly rubbed his head. Why would I do that? He gasped. Unable to come up with an answer, Bakugou slowly slumped back against the wall of the cave with crossed arms. Won't you get in trouble? I mean, you were supposed to kill me or whatever. I wasn't. Taking a breath, Izuku revised his reply. I'm being careful. He simply said. Standing, he dusted himself off and shyly added, and I don't like it when you push me. Bakugou's eyes widened. He didn't have memories of playing with kids his age. He had no idea how to act except what his impulses told him. It had gotten him this far. He didn't even think of how it affected others. Especially since he was on his own. He simply blurted, okay. Thanks. With a smile that could light up the world, Izuku beamed. So bright. The wolf boy uttered to himself, shielding his eyes. What was that? Izuku asked as he began unbagging everything he brought. Nothing, Deku. I said nothing. The roaring flames and cracking of the firewood were the only sounds after Midoriya had stoked the fire. While Bakugou was starving, he waited patiently for Izuku to finish cooking the meal he'd brought. It was nice not to have to fight for a meal for a change. Plus, he had something to distract him from his hunger. The flames reflected off Midoriya's hair beautifully. It was like he was an angel, glowing in the rays of light. His eyes glittered like the sun between fresh, summer leaves, the perfect shades of green and gold. Bakugou's eyes were wide with wonder. He'd never seen another human so close since he lived in the village. He didn't remember this boy at all, but then again, he wasn't trying to make friends back then. 2. 3. 4. He counted under his breath. Izuku had 4 defining freckles on both his cheeks. They were so obnoxiously cute that it made Katsuki growl under his breath. Okay. All done. Izuku beamed, removing the pot from the fire. We'll have to let it cool a little. I bought enough to last a couple of days. Hopefully, by then your leg will feel better enough. Okay, what the hell is your deal? Snapped the wolf child. Izuku, bewildered, let his jaw hang slack at the outburst, unable to spit out a sentence in time before Bakugou became impatient. Ha. First you want to cut off my tail, then you save me, next you bring me supplies and food, what the hell do you want from me? Trying to bribe me? Who. Throwing his hands up, Izuku fumbled about. And no. I don't have any ulterior motives, I swear. Then why are you being so nice to me? Because. You needed it. Shyly, Midoriya muttered. Unable to understand this selflessness, Bakugou blew a raspberry to the cold air. Yeah, sure, then when I let my guard down you'll steal my tail and run off. I would never. I already feel terrible about that. I'm trying to be your friend. Nothing more. You said that yesterday. It doesn't make sense to me. You and I don't live in the same world. Unless our relationship is transactional, then we don't belong together. That makes me sad to hear you say that. Izuku softly spoke. Bakugou's ears twitched as he blankly stared at the other. What was his deal? Why would he be sad about that? They just met, surely this kid wasn't after something with this whole friendship business. Skeptical, Bakugou heavily sighed. Don't you have friends in the village? He grumbled as his claws drew circles in the dirt. Not really. My dad is the village leader, so lots of people are very nice to me. But as far as friends go, none of the others like me much. I'm just too different. Plus I think they're jealous of me. Sullen, Izuku tucked himself in the fur cloak he wore and took a sip of his soup. Staring, Bakugou slowly blinked. He groaned loudly before grumpily replying, well of course they're jealous. You're so much more special than they are, even if you are an idiot. You think I'm special? A smile cracked against Izuku's lips as the light began returning to his eyes. Unable to hold eye contact, Bakugou blew air from his pursed lips and sharply turned away with his chin up. He hastily spat out, yeah. 'Cause only someone crazy would help someone like me. I could still kill you anytime I please. A thick redness had found its way bubbling on Bakugou's tan cheeks by this point. Izuku noticed but decided not to say anything as he scooted closer to the shy wolf boy. Before Bakugou knew it, Izuku was right next to him with the largest grin on his face and the cutest pink cheeks. That means so much, Kaken. Thank you. Shocked and extremely embarrassed, Bakugou whipped his attention back to the happy, giggling green-haired boy. Uncontrollably, his tail began to wag behind him. This kid. Shut up, DMN Deku. I don't want to hear stupid stuff like that come out of your mouth again. With a stuck-out lip, Bakugou huffed with steam coming out of his ears. Heh. I'm sorry. I'll try to. The silence that followed made Bakugou shift uncomfortably. He could tell there was something going on behind this cheerful facade. He sighed loudly, then groaned, You're making a stupid face, what is it? Well, I just don't know when I'll be able to come back again. Bakugou's heart mysteriously sank. Well. When I came back to the village yesterday, the boys that put me up to the whole thing cornered me. There he is. Grabbing from behind as Izuku attempted to slip by the gate doors, the older twin, Darien, flung him against the wall and smirked. Little Izuku. Hello. Nervously, Deku grasped what was left of his cloak and kept his viridescent eyes glued to the ground. Don't just hello us. The other twin, Adrian, harshly spat. Where's the tail? His eyes then slowly trailed down to the boy's outfit, noticing the tears and even blood stains. No way. He began in disbelief. Did you actually? I almost died, thanks to you. Izuku shoved the boys off of him with tears sprinting to his eyes and down his cheeks in large bundles. Kaken doesn't exist, but if this was how you were gonna treat me as a brother. Then, I want nothing to do with you, belted the young MSTR while trying to make an escape. However, the twin that started this whole thing quickly grabbed Izuku back by the wrist. Listen here. Just because you couldn't do it doesn't mean you get to walk away thinking you're better than us. Darien growled. Let me go. Trying to scrape away the boy's hand, Izuku pulled and writhed. By now some other adults began to look on in concern hearing Izuku's cries. Noticing this, the twin let Deku go. Simultaneously, Izuku yanked one more time, falling on the dirt with a thud. Oh no. Let me help you up, Izuku. He smiled, kneeling to the recovering boy. Lifting him to his feet he loudly continued, let me dust you off. Then leaned in with a sinister growl to his voice so only Deku could hear, I'll be watching you, this isn't over. The spoon in Bakugou's hand snapped under his strength. The two boys jumped simultaneously as the sound startled them both. Blushing, the blonde stared at the wooden spoon's other half in a daze. Why am I so angry? Anyways. Izuku shyly continued, I need to be careful from now on. That's why I brought so much with me today. I'm hoping you will be better soon. Maybe a week. You're still coming here after that SHT, Bakugou gasped. Of course. You're still hurt, I want to make sure you're well. There's no way I could sit at home knowing you were still hurt and not do anything to help. The sincerity in Izuku's voice made Bakugou's little heart thump painfully in his chest. This feeling. It was warm, comforting, and very new. He'd never felt a sensation quite like it, and it terrified him. What was this little twerp doing to him? Making him feel so soft. It was ridiculous. I don't need your help, DMN it. Get it through that dumb head of yours. I don't want you here. Just go and die for all I care. Izuku gasped and slowly let his body relax as the feeling set in. Right. I'm sorry. Tears fell from his trembling eyes. Bakugou glanced back at the sound of his shaky voice and immediately his ears and tail went limp. I'm sorry, you're right. I shouldn't have interfered. I've done enough harm. I'm sorry, Kaken. I'm going to leave now. You'll never have to see me again. Unsteady and still wiping large beads off his freckled cheeks, the young MSTR quickly stood and briskly walked to the entrance of the cave. I'm such a fool. Why did I think this would be any different? I'm being so selfish. I never should have assumed he'd want to be friends with me. This was a mistake. Deku. Bakugou's body moved on its own as he struggled to stand on his hurt leg. A sharp pain caused him to yelp involuntarily, but he kept moving until his claws tightly snagged into the cloak of the boy. Wait. Don't. Please. An expression of shock snapped through his crimson eyes. His fanged mouth hung dumbly as he suddenly came to realize what he was doing. Kaken. Instantly, Izuku came to Bakugou's side and began to lean down to help him up, then hesitated, not sure if he should touch him. Bakugou stared up at the tear-filled eyes of this shorter boy as his lips slowly came to a close. He glanced down at the dirt and was silently contemplating something for several seconds. Slowly, he glanced back up at Izuku, who was kneeling at this point awaiting what the wolf child would do. He nervously swallowed as those crimson eyes settled on the extended hand before him. Cautiously, Bakugou reached out, hesitated momentarily, then lightly rested his scarred hand on the gentle, smooth palms of Izuku. His eyes shimmered in glee as the flustered pup shifted his squinting eyes to the side as a deep redness befell his cheeks. I don't hate having you around. As long as you don't get in my way. Maybe having someone around wouldn't be so bad after all. He seems hopeless without me anyways. I won't. I promise. Excitedly Izuku beamed, happy tears streaming down his face. And stop your stupid crying, barked Bakugou. He wouldn't admit it, but it made him squirm for some reason. Sorry. Izuku sniffles between giggles. I'll do my best. As Izuku said, he did not return to the cave of the demi-human for a week. While Bakugou knew this was going to be the case, a small part of his brain was secretly searching for his new acquaintance. He was able to ignore it for a while, but as the days dragged on and he was slowly able to heal, Bakugou found himself losing focus more and more. He found himself staring at the entrance to his cave expecting that appealing, forest green hair to bounce up the hill greeting him with that same, doppy smile he seemed to always have. He continued to sniff the air attempting to detect his scent. His ears became more aware of the slightest changes in the environment for the slim chance he'd be making his way up the mountain. Bakugou felt humiliated. This stupid Deku had him paranoid. Just last week he was the top dog in the forest. Now he was a groveling puppy awaiting his friend. Friend. He's not my. I mean. I don't. This troubled Bakugou. Was he starting to rely on him? No F that. He had been betrayed by everyone in his life. His mother died and left him to fend for himself, the same village Izuku was from kicked him out at such a young age. He couldn't trust a single person. He only had himself and that was it. I won't let that DMN Deku get to me. He muttered bitterly. Slowly making his way back up the hill with his small fire logs, Bakugou made sure to carefully look where he was stepping on his healing leg. That's when he heard it. Kaken. The footsteps began to run. Unable to control it, an excited gasp escaped Bakugou as he whipped around to see Izuku eagerly running up the hill. The blonde's heart thumped loudly in his ears and his tail wagged uncontrollably behind him. It was so obvious how relieved he was, despite his best effort to seem otherwise. As Izuku came up to his side, Bakugou glared and tossed his nose up. You could have taken more time. Not like I was in any hurry to see you again. He indignantly huffed. After catching his breath, Izuku leaned on his knees and then smiled at the tail wagging behind Katsuki's cloak. With a final huff, he stood again and innocently leaned forward causing Kaken to lean back in shock. I'm happy to see you too, Kaken. I missed you a lot. Eck. Grunting bewilderedly, Bakugou leaped back slightly to get out of Izuku's bubble dropping the logs in the process. Oh. Let me help you. I'm sure your leg still bothers you. Instantly kneeling, Izuku lifted one log, with a struggle, before attempting to stand back up. He groaned and heaved but the weight was too much. To his surprise, Bakugou knelt down and snatched the log from him like it wasn't a thing. Slightly their hands touched causing them both to squirm and pull away cheekily. Idiot, you're too weak. I'm the strong one, remember. You will only slow me down, stay behind me, got it? While he wouldn't admit it, Bakugou was being a bit facetious. He wasn't able to look Deku in the eyes for some reason. That DMN sparkle was giving his heart a run for its money. Okay, happy to accommodate, Izuku giddily skipped behind the other with a cheesy grin on his cute, chubby cheeks. After arriving back at Bakugou's lair, Izuku made himself cozy by the fire rubbing his hands together after removing his leather gloves. Bakugou kept himself distracted by stacking his woodpile avoiding looking at the twerp for as long as possible. I'm glad you're feeling better. Izuku popped up from across the cave. His angelic voice echoed in the small confides. Yeah, Bakugou mumbled. Well, I heal fast. Just another awesome thing about me. You're right. I shouldn't have been so worried. You're amazing. The admiration dripping from his sweet smile made Bakugou grin slightly. That's the only thing you have right, Deku. He cockily replied. So what have you been up to? Tried to rip off any other best man tales lately? I really wish you'd drop that. Pouting, Izuku's brows narrowed. Bakugou came to sit down a foot away from him and the fire with a hand-carved bowl and spoon. Handing it to Midoriya, he took his own and began to stir the soup he'd been preparing in the pot. How can someone as dorky as you trying to take on someone as strong as me? It's actually hilarious. Yeah, laugh it up. Cracking a grin, Izuku rolled his large eyes. So, what are you making? Rabbit soup, Bakugou replied. I found some radishes, carrots, and beets too. It smells so good. Mouth-watering, Izuku oodles at the pot excitedly. I can't wait to try it. Prepare to be blown away, Deku. Smirking with pride, the blonde removed the big spoon full of rich soup and plopped a healthy helping into Izuku's bowl. You think I'm amazing now? You ain't seen nothing yet. Thank you for the meal. Izuku took a big slurp and immediately his emerald eyes sparkled. Wow. It's delicious. Scarfing down some more, Izuku melted at the delectable dish. Honestly, it's the best I've ever had. Piff. Bakugou rolled his eyes. You're just being a kiss butt. No. I truly mean it. Izuku hastily corrected. His mouth was a dripping mess having spoken between swallows. Idiot. Bakugou tossed a cloth to Izuku, smacking him in the face. You really are awesome, Kaken. I couldn't cook to save my life. Well, you have to learn if you don't want to die. Slightly shading his eyes behind his hair, Bakugou gingerly took his own spoonful and stuffed it into his mouth. Izuku looked on sadly, then stared at his own reflection in the bowl. He couldn't imagine being alone for as long as Bakugou had been. It was disheartening. It was at that moment Izuku made a silent vow to himself. I'll always watch over him. I can't always be there for him in person, but when I can, I'll do what I have to make him happy. The hell are you looking at? Something wrong with it now. Bakugou spat between chomps of a particularly large piece of meat. He flung his spoon at Deku accusingly with a blunt glare. And no. It's still delicious. Gasped Izuku, who then scarfed down the whole bowl, not paying mind to the scalding broth burning his throat. More please. He gasped, steam frothing from his mouth. F dumb butt. Slow down. Snapped Katsuki as he almost snapping another perfectly good spoon. Sorry. For years seemed to pass by like a flash. Now 14, Bakugou was becoming a strong, young man. His determination and natural talents helped him overcome many hardships. With Izuku backing him up and cheering him on, it helped him keep going. Honestly, Katsuki wasn't sure if he would have survived as long as he had so far without him. Anytime he felt helpless or weak, a little voice in his head would start running in his ears that sounded eerily similar to that little dork. While he lied to himself about how annoying it was, Bakugou couldn't help but smile about it unconsciously. Izuku was also growing up. He was still a sweet boy, always caring, always kind, and always giving 110% of himself to everyone and everything. The village was starting to recognize him as a strong young man that would be a fine leader when the time came. But Izuku wasn't so sure. Becoming a leader wasn't something he looked forward to. He wasn't sure if he was up to the task of leading a vastly growing village. The other boys he had trouble with in the past didn't think so either. They tormented him in any way they could that wouldn't directly lead to them. They sabotaged every accomplishment they could Izuku made to make him look bad, but somehow Izuku always came back on top. It infuriated them. Izuku knew he wasn't wanted, but the thought of Kaken kept him optimistic. Any moment he got to spend with the demi-human breathed life into his sails up until the moment night would fall and he'd have to leave for the next hiatus of their ever-growing friendship. Izuku hadn't told Kaken yet, but when did become leader, he was going to make sure Bakugou was welcomed back into the village. He would protect his friend, no matter what. While Izuku wasn't able to visit his friend often, he would always have that blonde on his mind. Whether he went a few days, weeks, or even months away, Bakugou always occupied a healthy portion of his everyday thoughts. I hope he's okay. Is he thinking about me too? I wonder if he ate already. Was he able to sleep well? Maybe I will bring him something. At night these thoughts especially took over. He let his mind run wild with scenarios. Most of them were just silly adventures they could get into mischief together. But also thoughts of having Bakugou living with him in the village as his right-hand man. Bakugou would be better suited for a leadership position and Deku knew that, but he also knew that when he did bring that beast man back, people would never accept him as a leader, at least not right away. So, he would act as a second hand or even a guard. Anything to keep suspicious eyes off him. Izuku often dreamed of that. Sharing every day with the demi-human. It made him happy. Bakugou also thought of Izuku in his life on the daily. But not in the village. Bakugou would daydream about whisking Deku away. With how often he heard the dork complaining about how much he hated the tasks of leadership and the expectation weighing him down and overwhelmed him, Bakugou just wanted to steal Izuku away in the middle of the night and take him far, far away. They could build a cabin together, and make a home just for themselves. Then they would never be apart again. But Bakugou knew this was a fantasy, no matter how much he wished it were true. He and Izuku were in completely different worlds. He was a monster, and Deku was a perfect human. The only one he would ever care for. As much as the young wolf wanted to, he couldn't bring himself to actually admit that. It was embarrassing and cheesy and not like him at all. Izuku thought of him as a strong, independent man that he looked up to, and Bakugou liked the way it made him feel important. He liked mattering to someone. The thought of suddenly opening up and appearing weak to Izuku set off alarms in his head. He'll leave you. You're too weak. Izuku would never look up to someone like that. Get your SHT together. You have to be the best. You have to be his number one. If you can't, he'll realize how pathetic you are and never come back and you'll be utterly alone. Shut up, gasping, Bakugou awoke. After quickly glancing around, the blonde caught his breath and wiped the sweat from his brow. He breathed. Pulling his knees to his chest, the boy softly rested his forehead on his elbows, breathing soothingly. His ears lowered around his cornsilk head with his tail curling around his feet. It had been officially 2 months since the wolf had seen Izuku. 2 months of waiting. Hoping. Dreading. That wasn't the last time, right? He's coming back. He's coming back. Right. 1 sniff to the air. 2. 3. Nothing. Having memorized Deku's scent by this point, Bakugou subconsciously would check every once in a while. While he had always done this to sniff out prey or danger, lately he found himself checking for a specific, sweeter scent. Every day seemed harder than the last. As he continuously picked up the fallen branches and leaves scattered along the path he'd made to his cave halfway from the village, Bakugou would grumpily think about that stupid Deku and his stupid smile. That DMN Deku had taken over much of his thoughts lately. If I ever see that DMN twerp again, I'm gonna kill him, he grumpily growled under his breath as he aggressively dug up a plant for his stew. Never lettin' me know when he's coming back. Always keepin' me in the fucking dark. Stupid Deku. I hate him. I hope I never see him again. Crack. Bakugou's ears twitched and his back immediately stood irked. He slowly lowered his body, pulling his homemade dagger from his leather boot and keeping his breathing steady. He sniffed the air once more as the frantic footfalls came closer. Then there it was, the scent of lavender and honey. Deku, immediately, Katsuki relaxed and stood back up. About time you showed up again, I was just about to forget you even exist. As Izuku ran up the hill and connected eyes with Katsuki, both of them froze. Tears were streaming down the other's freckled cheeks as he heaved breathlessly, having run the entire journey to Bakugou's cave. His usually perfect clothing was disheveled and dirty, as well as his hair being extraordinarily unkempt. Bakugou, unable to breathe as he took in the sight, slowly began to walk forward through the bushes until his feet suddenly began to jog where he met Deku on the path. Deku. What the hell is wrong with you? Why are you? Without warning, Izuku tumbled over after taking another step, reaching out for the blonde. Izuku, startled, Bakugou swiftly caught the boy in his scarred arms, dropping the basket of food he'd been harvesting. The contents spilled onto the cleared path as he worriedly scanned Izuku's tear-soaked face. You idiot. You ran all the way here, didn't you? In a scolding way so as to hide his worry, Bakugou abandoned his LBR and scooped Izuku into his arms, quickly hot-footing it to his cave. Izuku, barely conscious, soaked in every bit of Bakugou's warmth. He relaxed into his strong arms and let his heavy eyes fall as another tear strolled off his cheek. At least in this one moment, he was at peace. A sensation that he was terrified he would soon lose. When he came to, the green-haired man was resting on something warm and soft. His emerald eyes focused for several seconds above him as he groaned unconsciously. That's when Bakugou's face suddenly appeared above him. This startled the exhausted teen as he leaped from where he laid and back, crawled a couple of feet away with a screech. Bakugou screeched too, but mostly from the oddness of Izuku's reaction. An irritated glare replaced the startled one as he crossed his arms. What the hell is wrong with you? He blurted. Slowly coming down to his senses, the shorter teen gradually sank back to his knees and sat on the dirty floor. His curly bangs dangled in front of his lifeless eyes while Bakugou ripped into him. You were gone for 2 months. The longest amount of time you've gone away was only 1 month and 3 days. Not that I count or anything, but I was starting to get annoyed. Now pacing, Bakugou threw his arms around in anger, not paying attention to the other boy who was slowly gathering himself up. Now you run up the hill knowing full well you're not athletic enough to do that and then pass out, like a dumbass, so I end up having to save you, because I'm such a good friend, and I'm going away, Kaken. Stopping dead in his tracks, Katsuki's BLD ran cold. What? My father. He's taking me away. As Izuku came to stand on his feet again, his hands balled into tight fists. His head kept low towards the ground so as not to show his tear-soaked eyes trembling from emotion. We're going across the country to learn about what he does as the village leader. It's to prepare me for my future. I don't know how long I'll be gone. W8. You're actually going to go? Taking a step toward the shaking teen, Bakugou unsteadily stopped midway and awkwardly shook his head. You can't be serious. Why the hell are you letting them dictate you like that? Becoming angrier, his fists closed aggressively, digging his sharp nails into his calloused palms. His fangs became more visible as he gritted his teeth and snarled under heated breaths. Stop being so DMN weak and tell them you don't want to become the leader, DMN it. I have no choice. Izuku screamed. His voice boomed against the cavern walls, causing Bakugou's ears to fall flat against his head and stumble back on his heels. Never had he heard Izuku yell. Especially at him. His mouth went dry. It's my destiny. It's who I'm meant to be. I can't. It doesn't matter what I want. You do have a choice, you idiot. Bakugou screamed back, gliding to his side and snagging his collar between his fingers. Yanking the shorter teen forward, he growled, You can leave. You can start a new life on your own, away from those creeps and all that SHT. You don't have to live like that. Oh, yeah. And what would you know about it? Shoving Katsuki back, Izuku stomped forward. You don't know the first thing about having people in your life that count on you. You've been alone all these years. You can't possibly understand the gravity of my situation. I was born to do this. This is my purpose. It's what everyone expects of me. I can't. I won't let them down. And what about me? Right, because it's always about you, isn't it? Stunned, Bakugou was unable to reply. His world was crumbling around him. Don't you know how much I want to run away? Izuku, now sobbing, threw his palms over his eyes. I'm not like you, okay? No matter how much I want to be. I'm not strong or amazing like you. The only way for me to get stronger is to become the leader. I can't do what I want. No, what I need to do the way I am now, he had to become stronger. For Kaken's sake. He couldn't be unwavering when the time came to bring him back to the village. Whatever it is you need to do, the wolf began with his eyes blazing. F it. Stunned Izuku gasped as in an instant, Bakugou was directly in front of him, then pinning him to the dirt floor. His deer fur cape draped over his right shoulder, shielding the light of the outside from Izuku, who was meekly below him with his arms pinned above his head underneath the grappling strength of a demi-human. Kaken, he barely managed to wheeze. Shut up, DMN it, snapped the other. Don't, speaking softer, his grip began to loosen against Deku's wrists. Abruptly, a droplet fell upon Izuku's cheek, dripping down to the floor, leaving behind a stain of sadness. When he glanced up, that's when Deku saw something that he would never forget. Tears fell from Bakugou's already crimson eyes as he pleaded, "Don't go back, Izuku." What? He barely gasped, his cheeks reddening. Stay with me, let's just run away. We don't need to stay here where we aren't happy. We can run away together and leave it all behind. Kaken, unable to tear his trembling orbs away, Deku panted while more burning tears sparkled from his lids. We can build a little cabin by the water miles from this SHT hole. We can live the life we choose. We won't ever have to be apart again. I'll hunt so you never have to kill anything. You can mend my clothes because you're the best at it. We can comfort each other if we get sick or injured. And we'll never be alone. Ever again, unable to contain it, Bakugou released Izuku and rested his fists on either side of his body, then his forehead on his chest. I'll never ask anything of you. Just this. Let's go. Izuku was stunned. How long had he thought about this? Was this truly how Kaken felt? Did he really have no longing to live with him in the village? How could he ask Deku to run away as if his life in the village wasn't important? I can't. Kaken. The pain of rejection made the blonde unable to breathe. While he didn't really understand much of what he was saying or how his heart felt about Deku, this feeling he knew all too well. Terror. So you really are just like everyone else, he unsteadily pulled away and backed up with an unsettling grin. Just admit it. You're secretly terrified of me. Aren't you? What? Sitting up quickly, Deku hastily stood up as Bakugou laughed to himself helplessly. No, I could never. That's why you always leave. You don't really like me. You're not actually my friend. You're just like them all. You're abandoning me. No. Kaken, please. Shut up, the scream seemed to morph into a ferocious howl, forcing Izuku to freeze. I should never have let you in. You should have just left me to die all those years ago. At least that would have hurt less than this SHT does right now. You're so selfish. Izuku's fist shook at his sides, more tears being shed. You honestly think I don't have good reason to do this? I'm going to become the village leader for you, idiot. What? You're right, people abandoned you, I'm going to change that. I'll bring you back. You'll have a full life in the village, and we won't be apart. They'll come to see you as I do. Someone to admire. Someone who is amazing and smart and talented and shouldn't have been thrown away just because he was different. That's the life I want to give you. To give us. Why the hell would I want that? All I need. All I want. Is to be with you, as the. Silence became defining, both of the teens stared down the other unwavering in their decisions. Finally, it was Izuku that spoke, albeit softly. Fine. If that's how you feel. Then I'll just go. Unable to speak, Bakugou watched helplessly as Izuku sharply turned away and dashed out of the cave and down the hill. When he could no longer hear his footfalls or smell his scent, Bakugou's knees gave out as he was left alone once more. The shock turned into resentment, the resentment turned into panic, then the panic turned into betrayal. Izuku had left him. And it was all his fault. Katsuki couldn't remember what happened when he came to. All he knew was his cave was a wreck. With his pots, homemade bowls, and utensils busted and clothes ripped to shreds, Bakugou stood panting in the middle of a rage fit. Breathing erratically, he paced back and forth. He's gone. He's gone. I'm alone. My fault. My fault. Izuku. Don't leave me. Please. Enough, he gasped, clasping his hair tightly between his claws. I can't just sit here feeling sorry for myself. I have to make it right. And there was only one way to do that. Pulling the cloak hood over his head, Bakugou swiftly made his way through the woods silently. As night befell the earth with a canvas of purple and blue, his shadow from the moonlight cast itself on the path. Luckily for him, his night vision aided the young wolf hybrid down the path until he reached his destination. Thought I'd never come back here, he uttered to himself. Before him several yards away stood the proud gates of the village he was born in. At the gate, two large men stood guard as the denizens rowdily held a celebration within its confines, presumably for Izuku's coming-of-age trip. Bakugou could hear joyous laughter and music from within. The wafting aromas of food entered his sensitive nostrils, to which he attempted to shoo away. Without his senses, he wouldn't be able to find Izuku in the crowd. Sneaking by the guards was child's play. All Bakugou had to do was climb over the log fence while they weren't looking. That part was easy. The worst was yet to come. Immediately as his feet touched the ground, Katsuki was overwhelmed. Combined with the deafening music, suffocating crowds walking in all directions and small groups whooping and hollering for performers and games, Bakugou's ears and nose were on fire. This disorienting atmosphere only filled his fire, making him more determined than ever to find Deku. I have to apologize. I can't let him leave without saying goodbye. It drove him through. Pushing his way through the crowd, Katsuki focused, filtering through all the sounds, smells, and people while ignoring the blaring alarms of trauma and fear. Finally, he heard something that separated him from the crowd. Come on, Izuku. Yeah, let's chat. Bakugou was able to catch a glimpse long enough to see two boys, looking to be around 16 pushing 14-year-old Izuku through the crowd into a secluded area. Found you. Stealthily, Bakugou followed and hid behind the veil of darkness once behind a small hut where these boys dragged Izuku away from the crowds. Tripping, Izuku fell on his backside and against a part of the fence surrounding the village. He rubbing his head before the older twin, Darien grasped hold of him by the shirt, lifting him to eye level. What the hell are you playing at, Midoriya? What? Izuku snapped, attempting to pry his hands off him, to no luck. Yeah, added the other twin, Adrian. You keep sneaking around and disappearing randomly, avoiding your dad and mom even on a night when you're being celebrated. What is going on, huh? I don't know what you're talking about. Admit it. There's something going on. What aren't you telling everyone, Izuku? You're about to become our leader soon, right? Aren't you tired of the secrets? The lies? Fess up. Why do you keep leaving the village? Bakugou's eyes slitted with rage. His tail fur ruffled as his fangs dripped in saliva. His primal instinct to protect began to spiral as he watched on. Why can't IF move? Come on, DM it, but no matter how hard he tried, Bakugou couldn't move a muscle. Was it because he was worried about something? They were asking him about where he disappeared to. Would he spill? After their fight? Why wouldn't he? Realizing this fear, Bakugou gasped and retracted further into the dark. Would that be it for him then? His fate rested with Izuku. And whatever he chose, Bakugou would relinquish to it. There was no point in going on if Izuku didn't care about him anymore. The only person in the world he even remotely cared for didn't want anything to do with him anymore. It was all over. Izuku scowled and without warning threw his fist across Darian's jaw, sending him stumbling back. The twins and Bakugou stood shocked for several seconds as Izuku scooped himself up and straightened his coat. "What I do is not any of your concern. You aren't in charge here." "Why? You brat. You hit me." In disbelief, the twins stood straight in a menacing aura, but Deku didn't flinch. "And if you don't want anything worse to come to you, you'll forget this ever happened. What I do, where I go, and anything to do with myself is none of your business. I don't care if your father is my father's second hand, you're no comrade of mine." Bakugou watched on with a slack jaw. Even after it all, Izuku didn't tell them about their relationship. He still kept it secret, to protect him, even risking the wrath of his parents after totally socking that guy. A deep redness befell Bakugou's cheeks. His heart thumped loudly in his ears until he became dizzy. This feeling of warmth and excitement, happiness and relief. This emotion he felt with Izuku, was new and exhilarating but also terrifying and complicated. When he was without Deku it was miserable and depressing, always wondering where he was, how he was doing, and if he missed him as much as Bakugou missed him. Those wonderful days he could spend when Izuku did visit, and how time seemed to fly by, and how devastatingly lonely it was the first moment he left again. The way Bakugou felt when he saw the other smile, laugh, or cry. It was powerful. He wanted to protect that smile. He wanted to dry those tears and prevent them. He wanted Izuku to be with him and never leave his side. This feeling. This emotion. It was. SHT, no. He couldn't. It was. Impossible. Katsuki Bakugou wasn't. In love. Was he? What the hell even was that? But. It was the only way he knew how to describe it. The realization hit the blonde like a brick. He stumbled back feeling as if he would vomit. Unable to bring himself to face Izuku now, Bakugou shriveled up into the crowd, running as fast and as far away as he could, because at the end of the day, Somom as monstrous as I doesn't deserve someone as angelic as him. Chapter 3, I'll never leave your side. Drip. 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 A droplet of continuous rainfall from the outside plopped onto Bakugou's left cheek every couple of seconds. While it was slightly annoying, the half-breed couldn't bring himself to move from the place he lay on his deer hide. The water came from a small crack in the roof of his cave. It had been pouring rain the past week this summer month and had just finished last night. While the warmer weather made it easier to hunt wild game and plant small crops, Bakugou wasn't feeling up to eating. The past week had particularly been a struggle for the lone wolf. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Their fight. Even though it had happened over a year and a half ago, the wolf hybrid could still recall the event like it happened yesterday. The pain in his voice, the sobbing, even the way Izuku screamed at him desperately. It was too much. Some days were easier than others, of course, but that guilt for having put his own selfish fears first and pushing Izuku away when he was only trying to help crushed Bakugou, even more so after witnessing Izuku not tell their secret, even though he had every right to at that point. Ugh. Rolling lazily onto his side, his deadweight tail flopped to the dirt unceremoniously. I wish I could've. What was the point? Izuku probably didn't miss him at all. Surely after that argument, they wouldn't be friends anymore. Bakugou knew this, he internalized it. So, why did it still hurt like hell? Do I really love him? This feeling in his chest never went away. It was painful, like every bit of his heart was being eroded away agonizingly slowly. He'd never felt such gut-wrenching emotion before. On the other hand, Bakugou had never really had someone to care about before either. Had he really f up the only thing good in his life? Was it truly over? I'm such AF dumb, but Growling, Bakugou sprung up from his pathetic fit and stood up to his feet. Enough moping around, Katsuki. You have to forget about that JRK. I'm the JRK. Ugh. Punching a wall without hesitation, Bakugou hissed as small cracks formed beneath the rubble. He pulled away, leaving the hole behind. I know that already, dmn it. Being stuck in the cave, lost in his self-loathing, Bakugou had forgotten how appealing his forest was in the summer. He could hear the birds fluttering through the tree lines singing their unique songs to one another. He stopped to see the wildflowers and the butterflies that hovered around them. They were appealing with their green and orange wings and long tips at the bottom of them. Kneeling, Bakugou held out his finger to the cluster as a smaller one landed and stretched its wings. Observing it, Bakugou sighed and felt the summer breeze on his fur. I want to see him again. He muttered longingly. Standing once more as the butterfly resting on his finger fluttered away, Katsuki paused, gazing down the now muddled path he had worked so hard to keep clean for Izuku's visits. Branches, weeds, wildflowers and other sorts of debris littered the forest floor carelessly, but Bakugou saw no need to fix it. He continued on, just listening to his forest be alive. He paused as he reached the top peak of the hill. It was a straight cut off to the bottom. This was where I last saw him, right? As his crimson eyes focused down the trail, he recalled the day after that horrible, sleepless night. Having been unable to keep his eyes dry enough to sleep, the blonde wolf decided to walk through his forest in the early hours of the morning. The birds barely had begun to chirp as the somber clouds signaling rain approaching hung low in the sky. As Katsuki wandered through, he paused as the scent of his friend wafted through his nostrils. He involuntarily halted dead in his tracks. Immediately, his heart raced as sirens went off in his ears. Did he come back? Was he going to make amends? Were they still friends? Unable to stop himself before he realized what was happening, Bakugou bolted through the bushes. His green cloak fluttered behind him as he desperately hot-footed it through the brush. He dodged fallen logs and thorn bushes, getting slightly scratched every now and then. However, the young man couldn't have cared less about a little bloodshed as he only had one goal on his mind. Izuku. Izuku. He desperately cried out in his mind, please. Breathless, Bakugou almost tripped as he made it to the top of a sudden cliff. He barely stopped in time before plummeting to the rocky bottom. Scanning below frantically, Bakugou diligently searched for his friend, hoping, praying, wishing he was here for him. Finally, he found him. Crossing far below under the tree line was the frame of Izuku Midoriya. He carried behind him a large, leather backpack wearing a white cloak similar to the one he wore when they met. He seemed to be looking for something as he paused in the clearing and glanced back. Bakugou was elated, he was sure he would never see Deku again. His eyes sparkled as color returned to his cheeks. A wide smile took him joyously. The wolf took a deep breath and almost called out before another scent crossed his senses. He threw his palm over his mouth and lowered himself into the grass as a taller, more muscular male followed behind Izuku. He carried a map and was glancing at it meticulously. His hair, while neater, had exactly the same curl as Midoriya's. That's the leader of the village. Deku's father. Bakugou realized the truth as he watched. I see. So they're already on their way. That same sinking feeling befell Bakugou as he crawled closer to get a better look. As the man walked by, Izuku followed his father, taking a step and then stopping. He lingered, then glanced directly up in Bakugou's direction. The teen froze, his ears lowered anxiously. There's no way he saw me. I know I'm hidden well. Unless he's looking for me. Izuku kept his gaze firmly on the cliff as Bakugou softly perked up. From Izuku's perception, the light from the thick brush and trees barely made Bakugou's silhouette visible to him, but he recognized it immediately. He saw the shimmer of red eyes peering down at him, and while to others it would be terrifying, Izuku felt a sense of peace as their eyes connected. Because that wasn't an evil spirit lurking there, it was Kaken. he uttered to himself. As the moment he stood there staring at him took longer than Mr. Midoriya liked, he turned around noticing his son lagging behind and gazing aimlessly up the hill. "Something wrong, son?" he asked, beginning to come back. Quickly Izuku glanced away and met his father halfway so he wouldn't be able to get a good look at Bakugou, giving him time to hide. "Nothing, father. Let's go," he replied. Once more they resumed their hike, but not before Izuku spared one last look behind him. Bakugou continued to watch, even stepping more into the light. His brows sullenly lowered as he watched helplessly while Izuku once more turned around and followed his father. Bakugou stayed until he could no longer smell Izuku long after his sight failed him. Yes, this was that same place. Bakugou still wasn't sure why Izuku looked at him that day or what his expression meant, but there wasn't hatred in his eyes, that was for sure. That was the only sliver of hope Bakugou had left. He thought about following them, to keep Deku safe, but decided not to. Izuku had made his choice. He wanted to respect it even though it hurt like hell. As the wolf stood there reminiscing, he turned his attention to the smoke trails in the sky. The village seemed to be having a bonfire by the scent in the air. Bakugou hesitated as a thought entered his mind. He really wanted to bring me back to the village, huh? Was it crazy? Oh, yeah. But was it a possibility? To Deku, it sure seemed like it. Izuku was determined to get Bakugou back to the village. He wanted to give him a life inside civilization and out of lonely solitude. Bakugou only needed Izuku. But it was important to Deku. Important enough that he would go on a trip for God knows how long just to acquire the skills necessary to achieve it. F it. Bakugou bolted suddenly from the cliff heading down the mountain. He wanted to be a part of Deku's world. Maybe he could surprise him when he came back and already be a part of it. This might have been the stupidest idea I've ever had. Standing against the log fence he just climbed over, Bakugou's heart beat wildly in his ears as fear sank in. He felt out of place, unwanted, petrified, and triggered. It wasn't like the last time when he had a goal to find Izuku, his comfort person. Izuku wasn't even anywhere near here now. Come on. You're doing this for him, DMN it. He's doing SHT he doesn't want to for you, right? Don't let him beat you. Just move. Forcing himself from the wall, Bakugou tugged his cloak's hood over his face further as people passed by. His gloves covered his claws which he continued to pull securely on his hands and kept his head down. The tail was harder to keep under wraps. He was able to secure it with a separate fabric tightly laced around his hips and left leg and a cloak tightly buttoned to his waist. As he glanced hurriedly around, Bakugou almost bumped into several people making their rounds of the village. Unable to help himself, he almost barred his teeth itching for a fight. Somehow, he had made it to the central part of the village he was born in where everything started flooding back. Freak. We should just kill him. What good can come from having this monster in our village? Filthy demon. This was a mistake. As he couldn't catch his breath, Bakugou was stuck there frozen in terror. He tried to cry, but nothing came out. He felt his body itching, practically screaming bloody murder at him to leave this place, but the young wolf couldn't seem to remember how to walk. It was as if he were encapsulated in a bubble, isolated from his body and spirit. He was trapped in an echo of the past with no means of escape. So instead, he remained there with mouth wide panting and eyes peeled back shaking in silent fear. What's his deal? Who is that guy? A vendor or something? People had begun to notice him, but he couldn't move. He was trapped as thoughts of the past took over his body, freezing him there. SHT. 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 Excuse me. Then, a soft, motherly voice broke that screaming fest in his mind. He snapped around unsteadily with eyes wide with terror only to be met with a calm sea of murky green staring back. I haven't seen you here before. What's your name? She looks familiar. Unable to speak, Bakugou instead caught his breath as she smiled at him. So sorry, I should have introduced myself. My name is Inko Midoriya. Midoriya. Izuku's mother. This was his mom. As he stared a moment longer, the woman smiled and softened her gaze. What's your name? She seemed so cheery and inviting. She was a well-endowed woman with large eyes and neatly tied back hair the same shade as Izuku. He recognized her, but he couldn't place it besides the uncanny resemblance to her son. He faltered a bit before she continued, Are you a merchant of some kind? Yes. Bakugou replied unsurely. I've been traveling around the country and I just so happened to stumble upon this lovely village. Nervously, Bakugou tugged at his cloak. I was looking to see what I could trade for. He glanced around desperate to pull strings when he noticed a butcher. My hunting skills. I see. Son, is it just you then? You seem awfully young to be traveling on your own. Taking a step closer she continues, and you never did answer me before. What's your name, sweetie? It's... She can't know my real name. She already knows me. If she found out, I might be killed. Deku. It just blurted out. The name he gave his crush, Izuku, blurted from his mouth. He blushed. Inko was slightly taken back before she giggled into her palm. Deku. That's an unusual name. Very interesting. Thanks. I guess. So, I'll be leaving now, I need to prepare for the night. Trying to make a quick escape, Bakugou tugged his hood down over his eyes as he glided past before she spoke up again. You know, I was just about to head home to start dinner, would you like to join me? No, that's, kind of you, but I'll be intruding. Nonsense, I'd actually enjoy the company. Her kind smile made Bakugou shift uncomfortably. Fine. With a nervous huff, Katsuki followed obediently, making sure to keep his hood over his head as he walked. As he stood in the open area of Inko's home, Bakugou was bombarded by familiar scents. He knew some of it belonged to Izuku and it made his heart ache, but the other smells were most likely his father and mother mixing together. The longing in his heart to see Izuku was amplified by the scent lingering in the air. He stepped side to side slightly as Inko hung her cloak on a stand next to the door. Make yourself at home, Deku. She motioned to the handmade furniture made from logs and deer horns. I'll get started on dinner. How do you feel about beet soup? I don't need to stay, I'm sure I'm imposing on you, Bakugou said as he slowly backed up to the door. Actually. The woman began as she began to wash her produce. She had her back turned to him, however, as she spoke. Bakugou's ear twitched under his hood, picking up a sad tone of her voice. See, I know it's selfish. But I've been a bit depressed lately. You see, my husband is the leader of the village. He and my son went on an expedition over a year ago. I can't force you to stay, but if you wouldn't mind sharing a meal with me, I would very much appreciate it. Staring at her back in silence, Bakugou lightly hit his thigh with his fist over and over again in thought. It would be nice to have someone to talk to, and when would he get the opportunity to make good with his crush's mom? He might never get this chance again. With a reluctant sigh, the blonde crossed his arms. I like my beet soup with some rabbit in it. He softly uttered, taking a seat. Chuckling, Inko nodded, fair enough. I still have some packed up. I'll add it to your share. With a cheerier voice, the woman continued to cook while Bakugou tapped his thumbs. He'd never been in someone's house before, not since he lost his own. It was a strange feeling, but one he could get used to. The area was warm and inviting. He could tell lots of happy memories were shared within these walls. There were several art pieces made from parchment and clay paints. Landscapes, flowers, animals, all impressive. Particularly drawn to one, Bakugou decided to get a closer look at it. It was a painting of a cave with a appealing sunset in the background casting shadows over the rocks with trees. Is that my cave? He thought. Oh. My son's work, aren't they appealing? Inko giddily walked by putting on the wood stove. Stoking the logs into the container she continued, he's so gifted, even at a young age. You seem proud of him, Bakugou replied. Very. I was worried about him for a while, however. Worried? Perking his interest, Bakugou glanced down at the lady with curious eyes. Well, he was born with a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He was the only child I could ever bear, so naturally, the position of leadership would be succeeded by him. However, growing up, he didn't seem very interested in it. I understand why. It's a lot of pressure on a child. Besides, he was much more interested in this. Motioning to the artwork on the walls, she stoked the fire and closed the container. I'm sure there are other options. Katsuki meekly replied. Of course, and we were ready to surrender that privilege to someone else in the village if Izuku didn't want it. Oh, Izuku is my son's name. Standing, Inko grasped the large pot from the cabinet and went back to the kitchen area. But recently he started showing more interest. I'm not sure what changed exactly, but I'm certain there's another person involved. He's always putting others before himself. Huh. Almost shocked, Bakugou blinked with wide eyes. Sorry, I must be boring you. Laughing at herself, Inko sighed. It's just been so long. And you remind me of my boy. Me. More taken back, Bakugou shifted his weight bewilderedly. Yes, you're kind, just like him, you're also about the same age. I guess. But I wouldn't call myself kind. He shoved his hands into his cloak pockets. After all, I am lying to her. How kind is that? Anyways, you can keep talking. I don't mind. Well, when Izuku was around 10 he started wandering off on his own into the woods. I wasn't sure what to make of it. It worried me, to be honest. He's just so trusting and kind. He loves people unconditionally with his whole heart, and sometimes it breaks him. But the nights he would return from wherever he went, he would be so happy. I decided not to notice him sneaking around and pretend. Trying to keep his head down, Bakugou listened with a rapidly beating heart. Little did she know he was the one her son would visit, and he knew exactly why Izuku suddenly took an interest in assuming command. He's doing it for me. A life he would hate. A life he doesn't want, even though he has a way out. Even though his parents would let him choose. He chose to throw that away just to let me back into the village. He would take that burden for my sake. It's annoying. How much I must mean to him. Gripping his heart beneath his cloak, Katsuki shook his head, trying to derail his thoughts before he got lost. He sounds amazing. I like to think so. With a wide grin, Inko poured the broth into the pot, letting it boil. She sat down next to Bakugou, which shocked him as she did so casually as if he'd known her his whole life. With her tea in hand she continued, he'll be a wonderful leader. Yeah. Was all the reply he could muster as he avoided her gaze. So, Izuku. And your husband? When will they return? Staring off into space, a more sullen glint befell her expression. I'm not sure. Interestingly, the longest my husband has been away was about 5 years. 5. Unable to hold back, Bakugou gasped and jumped to his feet. That's insane. The hell does he do? Now pacing, he racked his gloved hands through his hair beneath the hood, going around the couch in a circle. Who's to say he won't go for 6 years? 7. DMN, I might be an old man. Inko watched on, holding her tea in hand as she took a sip. Her expression was unreadable as she sat it down on her lap. Deku. She spoke calmly. Pausing mid-step, Bakugou felt a cold sweat on his back. OSHT. SHT, he slowly turned to her smiling face as she patted the seat next to her softly. She knows. She has to. IF blew it. Defeated, Bakugou sat slumped in the chair. He waited with bated breath before nervously making eye contact with her. He couldn't tell what she was thinking behind her eyes, and that alone frightened him. Don't worry, she said. Ha. They won't be gone more than 2 years. She replied as if his outburst didn't happen. My husband and I talked about it before we agreed. While they don't have a set date to return, Izuku is too young to travel that long. He would get very homesick. For his sake, my husband will bring Izuku home within 2 years. It won't be long now before they return. Oh. Relaxing into the seat, Bakugou covered his face with an embarrassed huff. He was relieved, but he knew deep down that outburst from earlier should have been a dead giveaway. Why wasn't she saying anything? I think the stew is almost ready to have more ingredients added. She spoke, interrupting him. Would you like to help? Standing with her cup and setting it down on the round table, Inko cheerily turned to her guest. Bakugou glanced between her and the door for several seconds. Mulling it over, he slowly stood up and nodded. If she had wanted to, she could have thrown me out. Even had me killed. But she didn't. She's still treating me the same. She's smiling and it's genuine. I don't know what she wants from me, or if she knows who I am, but I want to trust her. Because I can make sacrifices too. For him. I'll let my guard down. I'll let people into my life again. Starting with the person I trust the most's mother. The rest of the evening went on much smoother. Katsuki actually enjoyed himself. He didn't want to say too much, but he did like listening to Inko prattle on about Izuku in his younger years and how her life in the village was. As the evening progressed, Bakugou almost forgot he was even in the village. So, when the time came for him to go, he stalled. Sure, it getting dark now, Inko noted as she washed off a dish in the bucket of water. Yeah, I should head out. I've overstayed my welcome long enough. The demi-human softly stood from the wooden table. Lady Inko, please, call me Inko. He smiled softly. Thank you, for all that you've done. It was nice to talk to you. I should be thanking you. I enjoyed our time, it helped me more than I can express. Inko replied as she wiped her hand dry. Coming to stand next to the wolf, she smiled up at him as he was a head and a half taller than her. You're always welcome back, Deku, and I hope you're still around to meet my son. I believe you two would get along very well. Yeah. Awkwardly, he rubbed the back of his neck. Me too. I'll get the door for you. Bakugou followed her to the entrance of her home and glanced out the window. The cover of the night helped him feel more confident to leave quickly without drawing attention. Well, thank you again. Tilting his head respectfully, the blonde reached for the knob. Deku. Inko suddenly said. Yes. Well. Twiddling his fingers, Miss Midoriya mulled over what she wanted to say to the point Bakugou started to shrink. Everything okay? Oh. Sorry. Sorry. She sighed and simply said, please be careful, and come back tomorrow, if you would like. Sure. Giving a half smile, Bakugou once more tipped his head to her and exited her home. As Inko watched his figure grow smaller in the distance, she reached for her heart and rubbed her watering eyes. He's grown so much, Mistuki. She closed her curtains and sniffled. Don't worry, Katsuki. I'm sure Izuku will be back soon. That was weird. Right. As he combed his brain walking from her home through the village, Bakugou grumbled to himself. What was she thinking? What did she want to say? This distraction caused him to accidentally bump into someone who dramatically stumbled back. Eye contact was made, but Bakugou didn't recognize him by face. It was by scent. A murky, gross smell he never wanted to taste again. You. With a growl to his voice, he felt his bound tail and ears furling with fury. What the hell is your problem, idiot? The other dusted himself off, ignoring Bakugou's glare as he adjusted himself. Don't you know who I am? As he looked over the stranger he then hummed to himself. I'd say not, since I don't recognize you. Well, I am, shut the hell up. Bakugou snapped. Excuse me. Bewildered, the other gradually stood taller and began stomping forward. Don't you dare speak to me like that. Raising his hand, the other teen found himself shriveling as Bakugou whipped his arm from beneath the cloak and snatched his wrist, pulling him over his knee and holding him there in a painful hold. One wrong move and he could dislocate the shoulder. Yeah. This is him. That creep that hurt Izuku. I bet he's even the same sack of SHT that put him up to taking my tail. Unhand me. Almost crying, Darien whimpered and fell to one knee as the pain of Bakugou's strength was too much to bear. Even though he could have crushed his bones, Bakugou heard something in his mind. The voice of Izuku. He wouldn't have wanted that, no matter how much he suffered from this JRK's hand. It was a struggle, but Bakugou released his arm and began to walk away. Hey. Hey. Trying to recover didn't stop the shaking of his voice. He stumbled to stand only to fall. While he watched this mysterious figure walk away unbothered, he bellowed like a wounded dog. Why you won't get away with this? My father is the second in command and I will find out, so you are. You hear me? Heh. Laughing, Bakugou smirked with a tooth-filled grin as he leisurely came to a stop. He then tilted his head back, his crimson eyes practically glowing in the moon's rays as he replied cockily, catch any demon tails, lately. Gasping, Darien fell back in terror. Bakugou stared him down, then turned with a flutter of his cloak, you have no right to speak to me. Because my best friend is the leader of this pathetic SHT hole, and while I don't understand why he is so hell-bent on keeping your butt unharmed, trust me when I say, I'll be keeping my eyes on you and your lackey of a brother. You will no sooner harm me than you will him. And if you try. Snapping his fangs at the scared shitless twin, Bakugou gleefully smiled, I'll show you just how much of a demon I truly am. Petrified, the young bully gasped helplessly as Bakugou then disappeared into the darkness. Several months went by. Every once in a while, Bakugou would continue to visit Inko Midoriya, which was always welcomed. She seemed to light up when she saw him, and while it embarrassed the teen wolf, he was definitely okay with it. The twins kept their eye on Bakugou, too scared to do anything, but also waiting for the opportunity to expose him. Luckily for Bakugou, he was in good terms with the acting village leader and she snuffed out any seeds of doubt they tried to pull. They shared meals, told stories, and enjoyed the company of each other. Bakugou was relieved to get along with her so well. Even some of the other village people had begun to take interest in him. While it was uncomfortable at first, Bakugou had begun to learn their ways of communication and how to act in a civilized way. No one except the twins, and secretly Inko Midoriya, knew Bakugou's secret, that he was the half-breed the village hated. Bakugou planned to keep it that way as long as possible. Bakugou had begun trade with the local butchers in town, collecting wild game for them in exchange for various supplies and wares. Working with that group allowed the wolf to connect with people in the village in a more meaningful way. He tried his best to match the vibes they set, but it was difficult to separate his trauma from the persona he was trying to portray. After all, these people were the same ones that called him a demon. However, he kept in mind why he was doing this and who it was for. Izuku wanted this. Izuku wanted to share his life with Bakugou. Despite his own better judgment, Bakugou wanted that as well. While he was skeptical about the people accepting him, he was going to try his damnedest to prove them all wrong, that he wasn't a monster, that he could embrace his human half completely. The only way he knew how to be civilized was copying Izuku and his manners. So that's what he did. Bakugou would apologize if he noticed he did something wrong and try to mean it. He would try to socialize with the villagers if they approached him. He would say thank you and attempt to smile. It got to the point most of the village knew Bakugou by his undercover name and welcomed him back when he visited. Because he'd done so well copying Izuku, they didn't even question why he never took off his cloak or why he hid his face because they trusted him. Yes, his lie was working, he was achieving the goal. He hoped that it wouldn't be long now before Izuku returned so he could show him how committed he was. He wanted Deku to be proud of him. Most of all, he just wanted him back so he could apologize properly. Almost at the end of the 2-year PRD, Bakugou prepared the fruits of his kill. It was the early hours of morning and it was almost time to head down to the village for his weekly visit. As he finished up, he tied the last of the rabbits to the end of a rope dangling off his staff. It was just another, normal day. Or so he thought. The blonde wolf took one step before he stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened as a scent crossed his senses. Not even fully processing the discovery, he abandoned the fresh kills and hurriedly bolted from his spot, making a mad beeline through the forest. Running on his hands and legs to gather more speed, he dug his claws into the ground, pulling up dirt and grass in his rush. The forest seemed to blur as he dodged and weaved through brush and debris. It was impossible to be careful as his mind focused on the scent trail. That's when he came to a clearing of the wood, the place that changed his life. He barely stopped in time before the cutoff of the pit into the clearing. Snatching the trunk of a thin tree to keep from falling, his claws sank into the bark as his feet pushed gravel and dirt over the edge. He heaved and gasped for breath as his eyes focused on his prey. Sitting with his back to the wolf, glancing up at the sky as the breeze of fall brushed messy, green hair to the side. The light of the morning sun kissed his tanned skin so elegantly it seemed to softly glow. It was the most appealing sight Bakugou had ever seen. Izuku slowly turned to glance behind him. His large, round eyes set calmly on the wolf and a smile tugged the corners of his lips. "Hello, Kaken." Izuku could barely get the sentiment from his lips before being practically tackled to the grass floor with such force it caused them both to roll a couple feet from where Izuku had been resting. Pinned to the ground, Izuku slowly peeled his green eyes open once more as he was met with the most set-off gaze he'd ever witnessed in his 17 years. Katsuki's eyes were wide with several emotions fighting at once. His pupils were slitted and slightly shivering as he heavily breathed, still catching his breath. Izuku could have sworn Kaken was more animalistic, like a true beast man. Large body with his teeth sharp and long and nostrils flaring. Anyone would have been terrified at the sight, but not Izuku. He kept his eyes locked onto Bakugou with a sympathetic expression. "I'm sorry. I was gone for a long time. That must have been hard for you." Slipping his arm from underneath the heavy body on top of him, the now taller man gently caressed Bakugou's cheek. Neither of them flinched. "I've missed you, Kaken." A single tear unexpectedly fell from Bakugou's left eye. With a whine he blinked in shock before more began to flow. In time, the wolf hybrid's body returned to normal as he furiously rubbed his eyes trying to stop the tears, but couldn't. Izuku motioned for Bakugou to hug him, but was met with an angry growl. Bakugou flung himself off Izuku and stumbled a couple feet away before falling to his knees. Pulling his legs up, he buried his face with his tail wrapped around his feet. Izuku sat up and crawled over to the other man sitting beside him a few inches away, trying not to be too imposing. They sat in silence for several moments, taking in the environment. "This place brings back a lot of memories." Izuku reminisced fondly, touching the dirt between his white leather gloves. "It's where I met you. Do you remember?" Bakugou grunted in response, not raising his head. "Even though we had a rough start, I don't regret it. You have been my best friend since the moment we met." Scooting closer, Deku playfully bumped his shoulder on Bakugou's. "So. I hope you can forgive me for our last interaction." Without warning, Bakugou threw his muscular arms around Deku, bringing him close against him. His fingers grasped his curly locks tightly, keeping Izuku from moving much. Izuku, while surprised, eagerly hugged the wolf back sniffling. Don't leave me again. You hear me, idiot. Nodding, Izuku grasped Bakugou's cloak and smiled brightly, taking him all in. I promise. I'll never leave your side. That innocent promise would come to haunt Bakugou for the rest of his life. Chapter 4, This can't be over, not when. It's just started. If Izuku had to use one word to describe Bakugou, it would be impossible to do so. Izuku admired Bakugou more than even he understood. He was cool, adventurous, smart, amazing, a bit of a hothead, but always showed Izuku kindness in his own way. Bakugou was the one person in his life he looked up to. He admired everything he was and wanted to become like him. His time apart from Bakugou the last 2 years only proved one thing to Izuku. He had known for a while, but it was only now that he understood and had come to terms with it. Izuku had a huge crush on the demi-human. Like. A big crush. Words probably couldn't even describe it. Izuku truly loved him. While he didn't know how Bakugou would feel, he knew in his heart that his feelings were real. He'd had them since they met and they only grew over time the more he got to spend time with him. The times he would be apart from Bakugou were indescribably painful, but when they were together, Izuku was on cloud 9. Life just came so naturally to Izuku when Kaken was around. He felt like he could do anything if he was by his side. So, he figured as long as Bakugou was with him, he could become the village leader and not only that, but bridge the gap between humans and monsters in the process. Bakugou was the product of pure love between both groups. He should be celebrated as such. Izuku was certain he could make them see the wolf hybrid as he did. To Izuku, this was the only chance he had to prove to Kaken that he was useful and that he truly valued him as a person. He wanted Bakugou to join his world and be just as happy as he made Izuku feel. So imagine his own shock when Bakugou recounted the last 2 years he was away. What? Softly, in disbelief, Izuku gasped as Bakugou proudly stomped forward through the forest leading the way. You went back to the village. Alone. But Kaken. Ah. Swerving on his heels, Bakugou held out his finger to keep Izuku from talking. I know, it was stupid and reckless. I definitely wasn't in the right state of mind when I went, but... He rubbed his neck with a redness dusting across his nose before crossing his arms tightly over his chest. Look, I am the strongest being in the forest, the world. But... in the last couple of years... I didn't feel like I was. If you had still been angry at me when you came back, I wanted to prove to you that I could be even stronger. Balling his fist, Bakugou somberly gazed at it while a patch of cool wind ran by them tossing their capes and hair to the side carelessly. Izuku's eyes were stuck on the blonde as he searched his expression for emotions. Anyway. I was careful about it. I'm not stupid. And no. I didn't think you were, I just dash. Shaking his arms vicariously, the young leader sighed and shyly tapped his cheek. Kaken, if anything had happened to you. A weight on his head caused Izuku to lose the rest of his sentence as Bakugou's fingertips caressed through his unkempt hair. You need a bath. You're filthy. Human. Smirking, Bakugou playfully shoved Izuku. I am not. Giggling, Izuku ran up to Bakugou who started making a beeline down the hill. While he was giving Izuku a good chase, he continuously glanced over his shoulder to make sure he was still back there. He caught up quickly, albeit clumsily, as he leaped onto the were-human's back and laughed excitedly between panting. Bakugou started tossing him around. Oh really? Then the foul odor I smell is your attitude. He jumped from one leg to the other before twirling a little too hard and falling to the grass. Izuku tumbled and landed with his head next to Bakugou on opposite ends. As they caught their breath from the excitement staring at the sky, Bakugou heaved a sigh. I missed this. So did I. Not a day went by I didn't wish I was back home. So, "Where's your father?" asked the awkward teen. "Oh, he went back to the village already. He was going to see my mom before heading back out." Izuku softly replied as the tickle of a sweet-smelling breeze went by kissing his cheeks delicately. Sitting up slightly, Bakugou glanced over at Izuku, who kept his eyes glued above him. "Does that not bother you?" "Not really. He wasn't the one I looked up to most of my life." "Oh. Then your mother." He awkwardly laid back down. "I can't relate to you about that stuff. I never really had either." "Well." Unable to bring himself to finish his sentence, Izuku blew air into his cheeks, puffing them out with a shy flush on his nose. "It wasn't her either." He thought absently before Bakugou continued. "I met your mother. She was very interesting." "You met my mother?" Jumping to sit up, Izuku fumbled with his words. Bakugou chuckled. "Yes. She's taken a liking to me. I may just replace you." Teasingly, Bakugou smirked. However, Izuku looked on with a strange darkness taking his features as he played with the grass between his fingers. "And the other villagers? I've pretty much met everyone. They let me hunt for them. Of course, they don't know I'm the demi-human they kicked out. I ain't stupid." "Oh. Well, I guess I did let it slip to one of them, though. That kid that picked on you, the one that you punched in the face. Well, I bumped into him my first night and I scared the SHT out of him." He beamed in pride for protecting Izuku in his absence. You were there." Shocked, Bakugou blushed bright red and shyly crossed his arms. "Well. Wait. That night we had our fight. You went to the village. Why?" Growing more panicked, Izuku continually ran his hands through his messy hair comically. The blonde quickly sat up and pulled himself closer to the troubled boy. "Because I was worried that if you left without saying a proper goodbye, we might not be friends anymore. But you didn't, so if you went to the village, why did you leave without saying goodbye?" Bakugou wasn't able to answer that. His heart raced in his ears as he gazed longingly into Izuku's skeptical eyes before tearing himself away and sighing. "Because I'm a JRK. It's just what I do. I couldn't face you." Laying back down, Izuku stared off into space. This whole time he went off to mentor with his father seemed pointless now. "So. You really didn't need me after all. You made it all on your own." Deku's voice was rather silent compared to the whistling of the wind. Bakugou seemed so proud of himself as he recounted the last 2 years. While Izuku was thrilled that he got to do these things on his own, he was also disappointed. He missed all this time with Bakugou for what seemed like nothing. He really wanted to be the one to show Bakugou around and protect him just as Bakugou does for him. It just wasn't meant to be. "That's AF lie." Bakugou abruptly yelled, causing Izuku to snap out of his funk. He suddenly felt Bakugou's full weight upon him as he had pinned him to the ground. A look of desperation, the likes of which the young leader had never seen on his face before, littered Bakugou's shivering eyes as he continued, "I always need you, dmi. You wanna know how my first day there actually went? I was scared out of my mind. I never wanted to go back there. Never. But I just wanted to prove to you that I'm serious about our friendship. I didn't want you to resent me. I understand why you want me to go there. I know what you're trying to do. I was selfish for pretending like I didn't." Kaken. Izuku burst with emotions as he threw his arms around Bakugou's thick neck, bringing him down into a hug. "I could never resent you. You're my best friend. I'm so sorry I made you feel that way." Sniffling like an idiot, Izuku cried out only for Bakugou to grumpily shove him off. Get your snotty butt off me. We were having a moment, dmin it. Sorry." Later on, the duo found themselves wandering the forest. Bakugou passed the time by telling the straggling boy about the days he spent in the village. While Izuku listened on absently, he found his mind wandering off to a fantasy. Instead of them wandering through the forest, they were traveling together looking for a new place to call home, having just run away from all their past worries and problems to be together. It was a fantasy Bakugou had shared with him that night that seemed like such a selfish longing at first. But now it was the only thing that came to mind. Had Izuku made a mistake? Had he been the selfish one? Bakugou was doing everything in his power to make his dream come true, but was it even right? Maybe they should have run away together. Maybe. He was wrong. It must have been apparent on his features as they came to the river bank. As Bakugou stood again after snatching some water lilies from the dirt, he made excited eye contact with Izuku, who awkwardly had his eyes glued to his now muddy boots in an awkward position. He held his arm beneath his cloak and chewed on his lower lip. Bakugou's finger pads caressed the hair of his unkempt bangs from between his distant eyes, snapping Izuku from his thoughts. Concern littered Bakugou's crimson eyes as he leaned forward slightly. Placing his hands firmly on his shoulders, the wolf lowered his voice softly. "Izuku. Is everything all right?" "Yeah." Attempting to smile, Izuku slowly leaned into the palm of his friend, taking his warmth in. "Is there any reason you're calling me by name?" Shut up. I can't call you whatever I want." Sheepish, the wolf averted his gaze and pulled away. Izuku giggled into his palm before he heard rustling. Turning once more, the shorter teen was pleasantly surprised by the anxious demi-human holding out the poorly constructed bouquet of flowers for him to have. With his face reddening from excitement and surprised delight, the young leader gradually glanced up at the wolf only to have to hold in his giggles. Bakugou's face, while hidden behind the fur of his cloak, was as red as his eyes as he kept his eyes locked to the side. He couldn't bring himself to look at Izuku as his racing heart made him almost too dizzy. "These are appealing, Kaken." Taking the flowers, Izuku fondly gazed upon them. "I figured you'd like girly SHT like that, so." Bakugou huffed, turning hurriedly to wash his hands in the river. "Hey. Men can love flowers." Izuku hastily followed. As he approached, the green-haired man's boot got caught under a hidden tree root, forcing him to tumble and flip off the slippery bank and into the rushing water. "Whoa. Izuku." Bakugou gasped as Izuku splashed in the water trying to sit up. A base found its way on his head, smacking him in the face with its tail before tumbling back to the river as Izuku spat up. "I'm okay." He groaned, embarrassed. "Honestly, you're still such a loser." Bakugou rushed into the river that was knee-deep and pulled Izuku up against his chest. He scooped up his legs, lifting him like he was the size of a grape. "Ha! You're a lot bigger than you were 2 years ago though." With eyes big with wonder and an excited Hesret thumping his chest, Izuku blankly stared back at the now closer wolf man with a spreading blush over his freckled cheeks. Unable to keep it hidden this time, Bakugou's own skin resumed its tomato color as he grumpily huffed. "Say something. Kaken." It was the most innocent voice the blonde ever heard call his name. It was hard not to gaze back into those gorgeous, emerald eyes. He could have gotten lost in them and held them there forever. "I lost my flowers." Sniffling, the young leader grasped hold of his friend's cloak. "I'm sorry," sobbing like an idiot, the emotional man cried. They're just flowers. No need to cry like a baby." Bakugou barked. "But you gave them to me. They weren't just any regular flowers anymore. They were a treasure." Reluctantly, Bakugou heavily sighed and pressed his forehead against Izuku to snap him out of his little fit. "Honestly, have you really changed at all?" he uttered in a tender voice. "We have a whole lifetime together to give each other stupid flowers." "Dumb but. Don't be so dramatic." "You're right." Izuku sniffles, drying his tears. Relaxing more into the embrace of Kaken that seemed to grow tighter, Izuku smiled once more. We should get going. You still have a grand entrance to make into the village. They've been waiting for you to return. Are you coming with me? Izuku asked against his tan skin. The taller were-human came to pause mid-stride through the river as the question ached his heart. I should stay back. I don't want to take away your special moment. I want my best friend by my side through all my special moments. Was the genuine reply of his friend. And I refuse to go back without you. You dummy. Bakugou smiled haplessly. Then without warning, he released Izuku into the water once again with an unceremonious plop like a rock. Oops. Gasping as he popped out of the water, Izuku cried out in shock from the prank. Pulling back his wet, long locks, he peeked through the strands to see the precious sight of Bakugou leaning over with his hand extended as he held back laughter. You can walk back like a man, he jested. Oh, smirked the freckled teen. Fine then. Then you can walk with me as the demi-human that you are. Izuku splashed the hybrid with a smirk. With a questioning grunt, Bakugou pulled Izuku to stand again as they crossed the river together. Helping the shorter man up to the graze, Bakugou glanced up curiously at his smiling face. I'm done hiding. If we're going to do this, then we'll do it as ourselves. Together. Are you sure? Bakugou blinked slowly, taking in the gorgeous being before he softly took his hands into his own with a confident nod. More sure of anything in my whole life. Heh. I like this new you. Maybe that trip did help you stop being such a wuss, teased the wolf before he bent down and retrieved a drowned lily that had found its way against his boot. Bestowing it to the other, he gathered himself from the river to stand next to his friend proudly. And yet, you're still that stupid brat that rescued me all those years ago. Let's go, Kaken. Placing the flower in his hair, Izuku grasped his scarred hand into his smooth one, urging the blonde along. Right behind you. The duo came to the last stretch of the path leading to the village gates. As Bakugou's nose picked up the distinct smells of the people within, his legs came to a halt. Izuku glanced up at the blonde whose ears had softly laid flat on his head. A look of apprehension shined through his eyes before Izuku reassuringly squeezed his arm. I'm here, Kaken. No one will hurt you. He spoke gently. Petting his locks to the side, the shorter teen smiled sweetly. Taking a short breath, Bakugou nodded silently and grasped his hand tightly. Entering the gates was easier than he thought. Bakugou kept his eyes glued forward, but even he could sense the glares and hear the shocked gasps as the guards watched on with slack jaws. Their soon-to-be leader brought in what they considered to be a demon into their walls. They weren't sure what to do except stare. As they walked through the village, people who had been going about their business stopped and stared. Hurried whispering and gasps from the crowd filled Bakugou's ears. He balled his fist, bursting his nails into his skin. Izuku held his hand tightly as they came to the center of the village where his mother was conversing with some other women. Oh, is that Izuku? One of them pointed. Who's that with him? It looks like Deku, but something is off. Another replied cautiously. Wait a moment. Are those ears on his head, like a dog? Oh gods, he has a tail. It's that DMN brat. So he survived. Inko gasped and whirled on her heels as Izuku and Bakugou came to a stop as now a crowd had surrounded them. She grasped her apron and dress, dashing through to meet the two as they now stood back to back glancing around the crowd. Izuku. Inko's yell forced the boys to glance up. Izuku, what's going on? Mom. Embracing her for a moment, the young man pulled away and gasped Kaken's hand in hers. He glanced between them and firmly said, Mom, where's father? Right here, son. The man in question came through the crowd that started to loosen as the sight of their leader put them at ease. Behind him was his second-in-command, Brolus, and his sons, Darien and Adrain. Once Izuku made eye contact with them, they shared a mutual glare. What is going on? Father, people of the village. I know that you've been made to believe that the people of the other tribes and kingdoms are evil and something to be feared, but look well. Throwing his hand up with Bakugou's hand tightly clasped, he shouted, "You've been lied to. This man has been helping you for months now." Yes, he lied, but he only wanted to show you he wasn't to be feared. This man is proof that we as humans and they as beings with magic can unite and be together in harmony. His mother was human, his father was a beast man. Despite it all they fell in love and together brought love into the world in the form of Katsuki Bakugou. I urge you to consider these words. As someone that has known Bakugou for a long time, I take personal responsibility for him and swear on my own life that he is and has always been a good person. Please. I humbly ask that he be allowed back. For the sake of our future, in the name of the love he was born with, allow him to stay under my watch. I swear on my life no harm will come to you. Kneeling and bowing his head low to the ground, Izuku's speech left the entire crowd speechless. Blushing, Bakugou stared at Izuku's bowing form in bewilderment. If his eyes had been any wider they would have popped out of his skull. With a brisk growl, Bakugou also fell to his knees and beside Izuku and bowed his head. Allow me to stay. I will do all I can to protect this village and Izuku. On my life. What? You can't be serious. He tried to kill a child. That's what got him kicked out in the first place. Darien yelled as he stomped forward. Lord Midoriya, you can't possibly be considering this. This thing to come back. I do see it as unwise. His kind can't be trusted. The second in command whispered to the leader. Mr. Midoriya hummed in thought, stroking his thin beard. As he stared at the boys who hadn't removed themselves from their bow, his wife softly glanced her eyes back and forth between the people, her husband, and her son who had moved her to tears with his speech. She balled her fists determinedly and loudly spoke. I was the one that had to remove Katsuki from the village during my husband's first absence. That decision still haunts me to this very day. He is just a child that proved he could be one of us and we betrayed him. I won't stand for it any longer. This madness must end. Bakugou's ears twitched. Oh. That's why she looked so familiar. He closed his eyes tightly. Not that I can blame her. What was she to do? I stand with my son. I stand with Mitsuki's boy. The woman came to Bakugou's side and knelt on her knees bowing as well. Allow my son to mend my poor judgment and let him back into the village, his rightful home. There's no need for that, Inko, Lord Midoriya said. But sir. Darien gasped only for his father to snap him on the head. Listen to your leader. Midoriya came to stand in front of the three kneeling in the courtyard as he held out his hand and said, my son will be the next to inherit the position of leadership. I've spent the last 2 years training him and watching him grow to fulfill that role. If he says that Bakugou can be trusted, then I will trust in my son. Father. Excitedly, Izuku raises his head. Son, I trust you understand that this will not be easy. Even I have doubts about this. Casting a side glance to the still kneeling wolf he continued, but, you'll be in charge someday, so if you can promise your people's safety, then I see no reason to doubt you. You're a man now, my son. Thank you, father. Smiling with tears in his eyes, Izuku embraced his dad tightly. Darien bitterly scoffed and stormed off with his brother in tow, chewing on his thumb. Izuku watched them go before pulling away from his father and softly nudging Bakugou up again. They helped Inko stand up also before the father once more spoke to his people. My son is now in charge as I take another sabbatical to the capital. Come to him or Burles for any worries and complaints. I leave you in capable hands. Once more holding hands, Bakugou chuckled in relief. The first hurdle was over. Or so he thought. Making life in the village work was challenging, to say the least. The townspeople were rather put off by the half-breed, but too afraid to speak out directly. Bakugou knew this and it made his blood boil. He had thought if he built relationships with them under an alias and disguise it would ease their worries. That didn't seem to be the case, unfortunately. There were side glances, worried and hushed whispers as he would walk by, and of course lots of snide remarks. Bakugou could have handled them, he could have scared them all shitless just like that little punk, but he wanted. No, he needed to prove them wrong, that he was just as human as he was a beast, that they didn't have to be afraid of him. He had to become what he thought Izuku wanted. He had to do what he could to keep Izuku by his side forever. If it meant sking in his pride and keeping himself silent he would for his sake. Because, at the end of the day, he loved that bumbling idiot more than he hated the world. Izuku on the other hand was getting fed up. Increasingly, Izuku got more and more shocked at how much ignorance Bakugou endured. He would watch on as the butcher would slam down the fish Izuku had purchased just enough that the water on his old, rickety table would splatter the blonde in the face. Before he could even react, Bakugou would lightly trail the pad of his thumb over the blemish and make direct eye contact with the man's hatful leer. Respectfully, Kaken would grab the meat and place it on a secure rice paper without saying a word. As he would turn to walk away, Izuku would be torn between snapping at the butcher or following Kaken's lead. There would be times the women selling produce during the market hours would cover their noses as the duo walked through, picking fruits and vegetables for Inko's meals. Izuku, dear. There seems to be a foul odor following you around. An older woman began. What is it? It's garish. A second would reply. Then the third, oldest woman would snidely add, it sure isn't my fruit that is rotting this village. As they giggled maliciously at Bakugou's expense, the blonde stepped forward blankly and reached out making sure that his sharpened, black claws showed as he snatched an apple from the stand. The women gasped and huddled together fearfully, before he sniffed the skin of the fruit. Hm. Seems you're right, the fruit isn't rotten, it must be something nasty hidden somewhere at the core. Calmly he would take several more and place them in a drawstring sack to fling over his shoulder. He then placed coins on the stand as he casually walked away. Izuku would only bit his tongue, stomping behind Bakugou. It was torture watching helplessly as Bakugou took this abuse. Deku wanted to bring Bakugou back, but was this the price? Were these people really so vile? It was whiplash to the young leader. All his life he grew up thinking that he would one day protect these very people. Was this what he wanted to fight for? Why do you let them do that? Snatching the wolf by his shoulder, Izuku tugged him to a stop in the village street as people walked by and shared glances with each other. Do what? Bakugou lazily replied. That. Pointing to the people staring, who then quickly hurried along, Izuku continued more hushed, it isn't like you. You would have never let them walk all over you like that. Isn't this what you wanted? Izuku gaped. His eyes widened bewilderedly as Bakugou stared back blankly. Come on, let's go. Your mom is waiting for us. As Izuku was left there in a stunned daze, he watched as Bakugou fell further and further ahead. Was this what he wanted? The question plagued the young man as they walked the rest of the way back home in suffocating silence. Katsuki set the groceries neatly on the counter of Inko's home as Izuku sullenly strolled inside. As he shut the door, Inko finished washing her hands and rubbing them dry on her apron. Hello boys, find everything at. She smiled cheerily but soon the expression vanished as she noticed their dark frowns. Another eventful day. Do we really have to do this? Bakugou sighed before Izuku hurriedly stomped his foot, shaking his paintings on the walls. The attention was on him now and while it usually frightened him he didn't feel it. Why? So we can pretend like it didn't bother you. I'll just... fetch some fresh water. Hastily removing herself to let them duke it out, Lady Midoriya grabbed a pail and made an exit leaving them alone. Staring at each other intently, Izuku decided to speak first. Look, I'm glad you're trying, but you should let me step in. They shouldn't be treating you like that. If we let them get away with it, then they'll never stop. It's fine. Trying to sweep it under the rug, Bakugou turned away, his long tail sweeping the floor. I can handle it. Izuku briskly grabbed his arm, stopping him. It's not fine. You're not fine. This isn't like the proud, brave Kaken I know. He wouldn't take anyone's CRP no matter what. So why are you doing this? Why put yourself through this torment? Shut up. Jerking away, the blonde wolf stumbled back into the table. His bangs shielded his eyes momentarily before he snapped his sharp gaze to Izuku, making him freeze. I couldn't care less about the SHT they say about me. What about you? Ha! Blinking widely, Izuku stepped back as Bakugou began. Stomping forward. Don't play stupid, I know you're way smarter than that. Your position as leader is hanging on by a thread. People look at you like you're crazy for being around me, for wanting me here. Does that not bother you? Because of me, your whole life here might be brought into question. This isn't about me, Kaken. The hell it isn't. Izuku's heels bumped into the wall and he found himself with his back against it. Katsuki threw his arm beside his head, slapping the wood with such force one of his paintings fell from the nail, clattering to the floor. Both boys locked heated eyes. Bakugou's brows knitted rivets in his skin as he gazed down into Izuku's shocked, round eyes, his other hand rose to cup his freckled cheek tenderly. While Izuku was fine with the caress, it only confused him more. Deku. I want to stay by your side. If it means I have to endure ignorant asshats for a while, then so be it. I believe in you. I know you can make them see me the way you do. Your kindness is annoyingly contagious. Sighing dishearteningly, Izuku reached to lightly grasp his thick fingers and glanced away. I never thought the people who I grew up with could be so cruel. How long will it be till they do see? How much will they continue to belittle you? A month. A year. Forever. I can't let it continue. If you want to leave, I'll be okay with it. We'll just do what we used to. I'll F that. I'm not losing another day with you. Interrupted the wolf. His voice loudly echoed within the four walls of the Midoriya home with a tender shake. If Izuku hadn't known any better, he would say Bakugou was slightly afraid. Like a wave crashing on the beach, Bakugou took Izuku into his arms, forcing his head against his chest. I won't do it. Like it or not, you're a part of me now. As long as we're together we can show them that they're wrong. You're the one that taught me I'm not a monster. You're the one that brought joy into my life. You're the one I trust the most, the only one I call my friend. I only need you. Kaken. Stuttering with a furious blush of roses on his usually pale cheeks, Izuku blinked rapidly as his heart did the same. What are you saying? Gulping, Bakugou slowly drew breath through his nostrils and out his thin lips. He had never been one to spill his guts, but the way Izuku was talking and the way he was starting to doubt everything they had built, Bakugou decided it was time to admit everything. Izuku. I'm going to tell you something. Something that I've held in for a long time. Realization sparkled in his emerald eyes. Oh, okay. Nervous, the freckled man slowly tore himself away and gazed up at Bakugou's pink face. Their faces were incredibly close now. So close in fact, Bakugou could feel the brush of Izuku's quick breaths through his parted, pink lips against him. His BLD red eyes drifted to those appealing lips as a new feeling of longing pumped electricity through his stomach and BLD. Izuku. I'm in love, Izuku. Suddenly bursting through the door, Inko stumbled in disheveled. Her usually well-kept hair had loose strands hanging around her face as she heaved, seemingly having run all the way back. She paused, hanging on the door, seeing she had interrupted something. I'm sorry. There's an emergency. What happened? Without delay, both of the boys dashed to her side. As they came to the door, Bakugou held out his arm, forcing Izuku to bump into him. The look of shock was what really held Izuku there. What is it, Kaken? BLD. I smell blood, he gravely uttered. Already a horrified crowd had formed at the scene of the crime. Discussing indistinctly amongst each other, the onlookers were shoved aside as Bakugou, Izuku, and Inko rushed through. The boys gasped in horror and disgust as before their eyes several of their livestock lay dead inside the pasture fence. They were mutilated with entrails and blood sprawled everywhere. What appeared to be claw marks and teeth gashes covered the cows, pigs, and chickens. In the center of the mess, the second in command and his twin sons knelt down at their newest baby calf, also a victim of the slaughter. Oh! Unable to bear it, Inko covered her mouth as hot tears streamed down her chubby cheeks. Izuku comforted her as best he could, but even he felt his body growing cold. As he grappled with the sight, he had to slap his mouth as the threat of vomiting came without warning. Izuku had never killed a thing his whole life, and up until now, he had never seen such a disgusting display. Bakugou softly dropped his cloak over the two Midoriyas without sparing a glance. Izuku peeled his eye open to see his friend's sour expression. You should do something about the crowd. They're only going to make this mess worse. Right. Mom, can you walk? Izuku softly uttered, turning his attention to the woman buried in his arms. Faintly, she nodded, not able to open her eyes. Gently, Izuku guided her to turn away from the scene and carefully wrapped Kaken's cloak around her shoulders. What about you, Izuku? I know this bothers you. Meekly Inko rubbed her eyes dry. Izuku only smiled reassuringly. Until father returns, I'm in charge. I have to be the one to handle this, even if it is terrible. Kissing her head, Izuku sent his mother away to discuss with the worried villagers as he returned to Bakugou's side. You sure? The wolf spoke as Izuku stood next to him. They both didn't look at each other as the shorter one took a steady breath. You're with me. I can handle it. Without words, the duo simultaneously grasped hands, walking together through the bloodshed to join the men. Already the trio had bitter sneers as they walked up. The man tasked with watching over Izuku as he tried to handle the village on his own glared daggers at the half-breed, not sparing Izuku the time of day. I don't suppose you know who's responsible. The man's booming voice matched his stature. He was a tall, beefy man with a short-term beard that covered his neck in white, straight hair. His balding head of hair was tied back in a braid with scars covering his left eye, blind from the injury. It's obvious it was that demon. His son, Darien, claimed with hate spilling from his venomous tone. I bet he snuck around his MSTR and did it in the cover of night, a drain added on. You think, Kaken did this? Izuku stepped back appalled. You're wrong. He's been at my side all day. He wouldn't have been able to do anything. Besides, he would never do something as heinous as this massacre. Bakugou's eyes widened slightly before softening and walking past the group unbothered. Darien snapped his body forward, snatching Bakugou by his tail and yanking him back. Where the hell do you think you're going, murderer? Winter is almost upon us, we need these livestock to survive the season without our crops. Own up to your sins. Izuku bolted to the taller twin, shoving him harshly. Holding out his arms, he glared at the family with such ferocity his body shook. Enough. If you dare to touch him again, I will have you punished. Me. Gasped the twin. He's not the one that needs to be reprimanded. The father growled. My son speaks the truth, without our crops, our livestock is the only way we can survive winter. You know this, Izuku. You're the acting chief. You have to take responsibility for this. This monster. He's not a monster. Kaken can find out who did this crime, just allow him to look around. He's the best tracker in the village. That's an order. The tension in the air hung dankly. Burles growled under his breath and tightly crossed his thick arms. Fine, Izuku. Allow the beast to trample our animals more, he won't be of any help. Breathing out between his clenched teeth sharply, Izuku's fingernails buried themselves into his palms until his knuckles turned white. Behind him, a hand was placed on his shoulder, snapping his attention away to the soft smile of the blonde wolf. He nodded to Midoriya, signaling it was alright before he knelt on the ground and began to sniff the grass. Izuku stood a few feet away, urging the rest of the group away to give the demi-human space. Katsuki inhaled all the scents he could. He examined the marks on the bodies closely and sifted through the scents. None of it was making sense to him, however. He continued on to the next animal and the next, with worry growing on his hard face. Izuku came to kneel at his side as Bakugou started at the teeth marks on the calf, puzzled. "What do you think?" he whispered. "No animal did this. The marks are inconsistent with any predator I've ever seen before. It's like it was put on for show." "What do you mean?" "Think about it, idiot." Pointing to the teeth marks on the body, Bakugou continued, "Why would an animal sink its teeth into more than one area of its prey? If it's hungry, it would go for the throat. Not only that, the flesh would be ripped apart. This just looks like it sank its teeth in just enough to leave a mark and nothing more. Same with the claws, they're inconsistent with the death. The calf didn't die from these. Another thing, these are different species. The bites are from a wolf. But the claws are from a bear." "Kaken, you're sure?" "Of course I am, I'm not stupid." "Do you know who did it?" "No, they covered their scent with something, so I can't get a direct scent. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. So that means someone is trying to frame me. For all of it. What do we do? We can't do anything. Whoever did this is trying to get rid of me by inserting a panic. And by the sounds of it, they're getting just that." The duo turned to the sounds of the crowd growing louder and out of control. Inko waved her hands, attempting to ease their worries, only for the men to shout their distraught voices and throw their fists in the air. "That demon has brought his own evil upon us. We should have killed him when we had the chance. I knew that child wasn't fit to lead yet. He is blind to our needs. Enough." Izuku screamed, shaking the air. The crowd fell silent as Izuku swallowed thickly. "I know you're all afraid. I am too. But whoever did this attacked our home, and that is unforgivable. But trust me when I say my friend was not responsible for this atrocity. How can we trust him? Perhaps he's taking out his revenge on the village with his devil magic." "I don't have magic, idiot." Bakugou snarled. Izuku threw his arm up, keeping Bakugou from speaking again. He sharply turned away and crossed his arms. "Kaken doesn't have magic, as he says. The only tribes that can use magic are the witches' cult in the east and the demon kingdom of the north," Izuku informed. "I studied them all in great detail, and I assure you no magical creature did this. We cannot allow our fear as powerless humans to consume us in such a crisis as this. That's how people die. Izuku, we respect your father. He's led us to prosperity. But we will be the ones dying if we don't have livestock," the farmer reminded. "Who else can it be?" "The markings. I realize how it looks." Izuku began, only to be interrupted. "No one is safe. Who's to say we won't be attacked next?" "You won't, it's not, what about our children?" As the villagers became more and more restless, Bakugou realized quickly that Izuku was losing them. He cast his eyes on his friend, who only began to panic. The tall wolf tenderly ran his fingertips over the other's cheeks and motioned his face to look up at him. He stared into his intently and brought their foreheads together. His hands moved to cover the boy's ears to muffle the sounds of the outside. Slowly, Izuku came back to earth and grabbed onto Bakugou's hands tightly, squeezing his eyes shut, and taking him in instead of the chaos. After a moment, Izuku was the one to pull away with a sour knit in his brows. His eyes blinked open as he thought hard about something. "Deku. Whatever you have to do. I trust you. Kaken, I have my suspension on who is responsible. So do I. Glancing up lowly behind Izuku, Bakugou locked eyes with the older twin, insisting on unrest within the crowd. But I have to be the one to prove it. They won't listen to reason. Will you go to the cave for a while? I'll come to retrieve you when it's over. All right. Izuku smiled as best he could, but Bakugou could tell he was worried. Leave you behind. But I'll be okay. I have to protect you, just like you do for me. I promise I'll come back to you, just as I always have. Okay, I trust you. Even though I really don't think it's good for me to leave you right now. They had it in them to kill these innocent animals. What would they do to you? They aren't after me. It's you I'm terrified of what they'll do. It's safer for you if you're away. Mulling it over, Bakugou reluctantly sighed. He didn't like it, but he decided to ignore his gut and resign to Izuku's wishes. Fine. Just don't do anything. Stupid, okay. You know me, Kaken, I'll be careful. All right. Nodding together in their resolve, Izuku yelled out, hushing the people's disgruntled screaming. Hear me. I understand your fear, and I will listen to you. For the time being, for his safety and for yours, I will send Kitsuki back to the outskirts of the village where he will stay until this situation is resolved. You have my word, no more harm will come to you as long as I am here. I'll get the bottom of this and prove it wasn't him. While the villagers mumbled in bitter compliance, Izuku began to lead Bakugou through the field and stopped only to converse softly with Burles. I will meet you at your home to discuss what to do next. That would be wise. Replied the man. Are you sure this creature will obey you? Kaken won't leave his cave. I'll send him with food and supplies and walk him there myself. Trust in me. Humph. Turning away, the man began to disperse the crowd. While Bakugou was uneasy about this arrangement, he decided that he needed to trust in Izuku and let him handle it. After this ordeal was over, they could go back to normal. Izuku came to the home of the second in charge alone later that day. While his mother worried about this situation, he decided it would be better if he went instead. His father had put him in charge and he was the one that brought Kaken back to the village, so it was only natural that he would be the one to address the people. Knocking on the door, Izuku announced his presence. Burles. It's Izuku. I'm here like we agreed. Silence. Puzzled, Izuku once again knocked. Burles. On the third, more aggressive knock, the door parted open. Izuku peeked in, noticing no one seemed to be home. Glancing around several times, Izuku gulped as he carefully stepped in. The home wasn't much different than his own. A small area for the living room and then the kitchen. In the next area was the space where the family slept. Izuku began searching. Darien and Adrian must have used something to make these marks. Come on, what are you hiding? As Izuku looked under, over, into, and around the home, he came to a point where he bumped into something from behind. Gasping, Izuku leaped and turned to face a taxidermy bear standing in his hind legs. Catching his breath, Deku poked the beast several times, realizing it wasn't alive. With a relieved huff, he poked it again, this time knocking off both its hands. Oh. Bending over to pick them up, he noticed something. Wait. Turning them over in his hands, he gazed carefully at the claws. A dried, brown stain was left between the claws, something that wouldn't have been missed when putting together the taxidermy. This must have been what they used. So. Then the wolf bites were. Izuku glanced up, seeing the head of a wolf mounted on the wall. He rushed to the prize and lightly tugged at the snout, which immediately fell off with the faulty stitching. Looking at the teeth, he could see at the base of the gums was a residue of blood. SHT. They really did do this. I have to tell Mom. Hiding the evidence back where he found it, Izuku turned around just as the door to the home opened. In stepped Darien with his twin following behind. He paused and glared. What the hell are you doing here? Waiting for your father. Izuku glared back knowingly. Where is he? No idea, probably still burying the last of the animals we can't harvest thanks to your pet. Shut up, he is not my pet. You know. Beginning to step forward with his hands in his trouser pockets leisurely, Darien came closer to Deku. I'm still pretty sore you lied to me, Izuku. All these years you've been playing us all for fools. Why do you expect them to respect you when you don't respect them? Shut up, Darien. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. Adrian snickered, we have the power to make your life a living hell. But it doesn't have to be this way. Slithering to stand behind Izuku, he leaned down casually and whispered into his ear devilishly. Remember that bet we made all those years ago? Well, instead of taking a demon's tail, take his life. Shaking from rage, Izuku was unable to speak as a cold sweat drenched his back. That demon is only going to continue to inflict more harm. At least, that's what the village thinks. Why put him through that torture, Izuku? You're kind, right? You want to show the beast compassion, I understand that. I'm right there with you. But for his sake. And yours. Perhaps the most compassionate thing you can do is end his suffering. Think about it. He belongs to neither side. Not the beast tribe, nor the human realm. Even if you cast him away to live in the forest, the village wouldn't stand to have him anywhere near here now, he'd be utterly alone. You know what it's like. Right, Izuku? You of all people understand the pain. To be alone. Izuku's eyes lowered heavily to the floor. His hands balled into constricting fists, digging his nails into the palms of his skin. His muscles tightened in his arms, forcing them to tremble as he grits his teeth harshly. As the silence continued, the second brother continued from Darien's point. You would be doing him a favor, Izuku. And with his death, you take your rightful place as the leader of our proud village. The people will stand with you. You'll have the life you always wanted. You're right. Izuku sighed, his curly locks draping over his closed eyes messily. Holding up his shaking hands, the man nodded. He would be alone. I see now. There will always be people that will never accept him. I have to do what I should have done. I can't allow his suffering to continue just because I want to make everyone happy. I have to do what's right. I'm glad you could listen to reason, Izuku. This is a delicate mission, however. Perhaps, we should accompany you. You know where he is, so well follow your lead. Let's go now. When he least expects it. That won't be necessary. I'll do it myself. It's my duty. As this village's leader. And as his friend. I'll make up for my mistakes. As the taller man deftly strolled past the twins, they glanced at each other with devious smirks. The door opened and shut, leaving Izuku out in the cold month of October 31st. The height of their winter solstice. This fateful Hallows night would have been full of laughter and celebration, however, there was a bleak and deathly chill to the air that signaled destiny was calling. Tonight. Something life-altering would happen, and Izuku could feel it. This moment would be one not soon forgotten. Tugging his white cloak around his face and huffing warm air into his palms, Izuku threw his hood over his head and began to briskly walk toward the gate. Unbeknownst to Izuku, Bakugou had been there the entire time. While he knew he should have been hiding and keeping a low profile to keep the villagers calm, Bakugou felt uneasy leaving his friend alone while this chaos was going on. So, he snuck back to check up on him, only to discover his friend breaking and entering the second-in-command's home. Secretly, he listened underneath the kitchen window with his sensitive wolf ears, even hearing their conversation up until the moment Deku left the house. As Izuku's light footfalls faded, Bakugou was left in a daze. While he should have been horrified, confused, enraged, and betrayed, he felt none of that. For some odd reason, he wasn't angry at all. All his life he had been made to believe he was a freak, something that shouldn't exist, and that his very life was an infringement on other people's lives. He was a mistake, a burden, a disease. Perhaps Izuku could cure this disease once and for all. If there was no hope of either of them being happy together, then Bakugou came to the bitter conclusion that Izuku should be happy even if that meant Katsuki was out of the picture. He would give Deku that right. He had taken so much from that man. His kindness, his joy, his love, his admiration, all Izuku had to give, including his home. Because of him, Deku's own people resented what made Izuku so special, to begin with. Enough was enough. If Katsuki had to die in order for Izuku to live, then he too could give it all for him. I won't make him do it. I can be honorable and do it myself and spare him that pain, I owe him that much. I just want the last person I see to be the first person that taught me to love myself. Can I be selfish one last time, Izuku? When Izuku finally made it to the cave, the full moon had risen above. Traveling with his white cloak fluttering in the breeze and a small sack on his back, the man came to stand several yards away, having climbed the mountain. Straight on was the cave that had practically become his second home. Inside this cave, a small flame had been lit with the blonde wolf himself standing with his back to the entrance. His ears twitched, having heard and smelled Izuku coming for several minutes now. He breathed in, then out, knowing what was to come, and he had prepared himself. A makeshift kettle had been brewing on the fire during his wait for his friend. As Izuku stepped closer, the kettle began to whistle loudly. That's when Bakugou decided to turn and make eye contact with the man he'd made peace with, wanting to kill him, staring back. Tenderly, Bakugou removed the pot from the fire and smiled softly. "About time you showed up, human," he jeered. Izuku said nothing, gazing on with an unreadable expression. As Bakugou beckoned him closer, Izuku finally took a step. When he came inside the cave, the demi-human held out his hand. While Izuku stood motionless with a tired, lifeless frown, he gingerly rested his hand on Bakugou's palm and held his fingers. Katsuki noticed the shaking right away in his friend's muscles. "So, you found out about who killed the animals," he softly began. Izuku nodded, "Yes. It was as we thought. You were being framed. I could prove it. However, if I do, the twins have a safety net with their father and mine being so close. I won't be able to win the people over." "No, you probably couldn't. Kaken, it isn't safe for you in the village. I realize that now. What I made you do. It was selfish, I should never have." Bakugou's index claw hushed the pink lips of Midoriya to silence mid-sentence. They both locked eyes once more. Izuku desperately searched within his appealing, blood red eyes that shinned so brilliantly in the moon it almost made them seemingly glow. His radiant skin basked in the rays of silver and blue, along with his bright, cornsilk hair turned purple in the light. Izuku's eyes shook with emotion as the warm gaze from his friend filled his heart with pain. "It's all right, Deku. I know you only wanted to make everyone happy, including me. You wanted to give me a life I never had, even going so far as to do something you didn't want to do for me. You've sacrificed everything. It's about time I did as well." Taking his hands within his large palms, Bakugou pressed his forehead against him affectionately. The next words came in a broken whisper. "I'll do what you were sent here to do. You don't need to sacrifice anymore. What I was sent here to do," Izuku gravely repeated. Realization shimmered in his widening, round eyes as tears leaked from them carelessly. "You heard." "I heard," Bakugou admitted before Izuku shoved him back. "Kaken," with a broken gasp, Izuku grasped at his heart. "It's not, Izuku, it's okay." Glancing at his hands and tail wrapped around his legs, Bakugou sullenly closed them tightly. "I've done nothing but cause you trouble, Deku, and I have the nerve to call you my friend. I know you don't see it this way. It's just because you're so kind. And appealing. Perfect in every way I just can't be. The least I can do is end my existence myself, so I don't add another burden to you. It's for the good of everyone." Without warning, Bakugou was tackled to the ground. Losing his footing, the beast fell back onto the dirty floor. Dust and dirt puffed around their bodies as he sat up, seeing the shorter man trembling on top of him. Bakugou reached for him only to have his hand slapped away harshly. Lifting his head sharply to connect his eyes with Katsuki, Izuku's eyes leaked like a waterfall as he desperately grasped onto Bakugou's green shirt. Bakugou could only watch in bewilderment as Izuku belted out, "You were the best thing to happen to me." Kaken, sobbing through his words, the man continued brokenly, "If we had never met, I never would have wanted to continue to live. You gave me a purpose. You gave me strength. You gave me a reason to keep living. Don't you dare say you don't mean anything, that you're only a burden to me. You lifted my burdens. When I'm with you I can do anything. I can feel safe. How could I? How could you expect me to want you gone from a world that only you can bring joy into? But you. You said, unable to breathe. It was like the world was falling in on itself. His heart was bounding from damage. Izuku gasped and cried out, distressed by the added pressure. Bakugou shushed him gently, uttering nonsensically to himself, "It's okay. You'll be alright. You're going to be okay. I'll save you. I'll save you. A hand rose delicately to caress the panicked wolf. His sharp eyes snapped down to see Izuku's faulty smile. His eyes were darkening quickly where there used to be so much light. "Kaken," he gasped. Kak. Chan. There's nothing you see can do. He gagged as blood spilled from his mouth. "Shut the hell up, dm it," he barked in grief. "Don't say that. I can save you, dm it. I have to. I have to." "Why?" "You know," interrupted, Bakugou could only gasp as Izuku smiled, leaning his head into the palm of his friend. "I always thought about it. Why you told me 2 years ago." Izuku's eyes fluttered open and closed as he tried to remain conscious. Bakugou could only watch as he kept the pressure on his wound. "Running away. I always regretted it. Leaving. I thought about building AAC cabin on a lake. We could find others like you. And make a new home. Just for us. A place where we could be ourselves. We can still do that, idiot. Don't give up. If I just, Kaken. Remember. When I said father wasn't who I looked up to growing up. It was why you. It's always been you. Kaken." Izuku weakly rested his head on Bakugou's arm, struggling to keep his fuzzy eyes open as the warmth of his body quickly faded away along with the color of his usually cherry cheeks. He watched helplessly as his friend tried everything he knew to save him, but they both knew, deep down, that this was the end. "Kaken. I have to tell you something." Izuku's voice grew weary, almost silent as he spoke brokenly. "You'll have plenty of time to tell me when you're better." The wolf sobbed as by now he could hear and smell the people of the village coming up the hill. "Stop focusing on me, idiot. Worry about yourself." "Kaken. Katsuki grunted as Izuku's hand began to slip from his cheek. He grabbed his flanges tightly, unable to hold back the tears spilling droplets from his eyes. Releasing his gaping wound, Bakugou swiftly caught it and held it there with a pitiful cry. "This isn't over. It can't. Not when it just started." Covering his face with the palm of his friend, he sobbed bitterly. "Don't give up on me. There's so much I wanted to do and say. So you have to fight, dm it. Don't die on me before I get to tell you I love you. Do you hear me?" Izuku, when he tore his hand away, Bakugou's stomach fell like a piece of lead was dropped in his gut. His blood was cold as ice as his face fell in despair. "No." As a storm covered the moon's rays, the sky began to cry as within his quivering arms Izuku's lifeless eyes starred back. The light faded as a finial tear leaked from his lids. He stared in disbelief, covered in the blood of his love and the people who murdered him. At first, his body shut down and then exploded. Grief, rage, anguish, heartbroken, and alone, Bakugou screamed into the night, broken and shattered. Thunder mixed with his mournful cry, as did the howls of wolves from around the forest. A clap of lightning danced across the sky and Bakugou fell forward, cradling the body of his friend tightly, feeling the last bit of his warmth as it too faded into the night.